The bullet was already in the air when Ethan Cole made his choice. One heartbeat. That's all it took for a janitor nobody noticed to become the man who changed everything. In the marble silence of Donovan Industries' boardroom, blood pooled like spilled secrets, and Claire Donovan learned a truth that would shatter her empire. The man who saved her life was the husband of the woman her company killed. This is their story. Watch until the end and comment what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this journey takes us. The morning started like every other morning at Donovan Industries. Pristine, perfect, and brutally efficient. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows on the 43rd floor, casting geometric shadows across Italian marble that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. The building stood like a glass cathedral in the heart of the city, a monument to American capitalism, where power wore expensive suits and mercy was a line item nobody could afford. Ethan Cole arrived at 5:47 a.m., just like he had every day for the past 3 years. He swiped his worn ID badge at the service entrance, the kind of entrance that important people never used, the one tucked behind the loading docks where the invisible workers entered to keep the machine running. The security guard, Marcus, a good man with 4 kids and a mortgage that kept him working doubles, nodded without really seeing him. Nobody ever really saw Ethan. He was just the janitor. The ghost who emptied trash bins and polished floors while executives made decisions that moved millions. He wore the same navy blue uniform every day, kept his head down, and did his work with quiet precision. At 42, his hands were calloused, his shoulders slightly stooped from years of pushing mop buckets and lifting garbage bags. His face carried lines that grief had carved too early, a widow's pain that lived in the spaces between words he never spoke. Ethan's locker in the basement was dented, scratched with the initials of janitors who'd come before him. He opened it slowly, carefully, the way he did everything since Anna died. Inside, taped to the metal door, was a photo of his daughter, Lily. 8 years old, with her mother's dark curls and a smile that still carried hope despite everything. She was thinner now than in the photo. The chemical exposure from living near the old factory district had seen to that, but her eyes still sparkled with the resilience that kept Ethan breathing when breathing felt impossible. "Morning, Cole." Frank, the head of janitorial services, shuffled past with his coffee. "Board meeting today. 43rd floor needs to be immaculate by 8. You know how Ms. Donovan gets." Ethan nodded. "I know." Everyone knew about Claire Donovan. At 34, she was the youngest CEO in the company's 60-year history, a woman who'd inherited her father's empire and transformed it into something even more formidable. She was brilliant, ruthless when necessary, and utterly uncompromising. The board feared her. The shareholders worshipped her. The employees respected her from a careful distance. Ethan had cleaned her office hundreds of times. He'd emptied her trash, polished her desk, vacuumed around her $1,000 heels. She'd walked past him so many times he'd lost count, and she'd never once looked at him. Not really. He was furniture, part of the building, as invisible as the air conditioning. And that was fine with Ethan. Invisibility was safety. Invisibility meant nobody asked questions about the mechanical engineering degree gathering dust in his storage unit, or why a man with his skills pushed a mop for minimum wage. Invisibility meant nobody dug into why he'd taken this job specifically, at this company, in this building. Some ghosts chose their hauntings. By 7:30 a.m., the 43rd floor gleamed. Ethan had buffed the marble until it reflected the recessed lighting like still water. The boardroom smelled of lemon polish and filtered air, every surface pristine, every chair perfectly aligned. 20 seats circled the massive oak table, each one worth more than his monthly rent. He was finishing the windows when they started arriving. First came Harold Benton, Chief Financial Officer, a man whose smile never reached his cold gray eyes. He was 63, impeccably dressed, and rumored to have killed 3 competitors' careers before breakfast on multiple occasions. He dropped his leather briefcase at his usual seat and immediately started typing on his phone, probably moving money or burying bodies. With men like Benton, it was hard to tell the difference. Then Victor Hale, VP of Operations, a bull of a man with silver hair and a handshake that broke fingers. He'd run the manufacturing division for 20 years, turning massive profits while the factories churned and burned. He laughed too loud at his own jokes and had the kind of confidence that came from never being held accountable. Others filtered in, corporate lawyers with expensive watches, division heads with careful smiles, board members who'd built careers on other people's broken backs. And then she arrived. Claire Donovan entered the boardroom like weather, sudden, commanding, impossible to ignore. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost 3 months of Ethan's salary, her dark hair pulled back in a style that was both elegant and severe. At 5'9", she carried herself like she was 6 feet tall. Her heels clicked against the marble with metronomic precision. Ethan was near the corner, emptying a final trash can. Their eyes met for maybe half a second. Her gaze passed over him the way it might pass over a chair or a lamp. Not cruel, just absent. He didn't exist in her world. He nodded slightly and moved toward the door. "Ladies, gentlemen," Claire's voice cut through the preliminary chatter like a conductor's baton. "Let's begin. We have a full agenda, and I don't intend to waste—" The door exploded inward, not metaphorically. The heavy oak door literally burst off its hinges with a sound like a cannon shot, wood splintering, security glass shattering into 1,000 glittering fragments. The blast wave hit the room like a physical thing. Papers flew, chairs toppled, someone screamed. And through the smoke and chaos stepped a figure in black. The gunman wore a ski mask, dark clothes, and carried a Glock 19 that looked both well-maintained and well-used. His movements were efficient, military-trained. This wasn't some desperate amateur. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "Nobody move!" His voice was rough, distorted slightly by the mask. "Hands on the table! Now!" The boardroom erupted into chaos. Harold Benton dove behind his chair. One of the lawyers grabbed his phone and was immediately rewarded with the gunman firing a shot into the ceiling. The crack of the gun was deafening in the enclosed space, plaster raining down like snow. "Phones down!" The gunman swept his weapon across the room. "Next one goes in someone's chest!" Phones clattered onto the table. Hands went up. 20 of the most powerful people in the city suddenly looked very small. Claire Donovan didn't run, didn't scream. She stood frozen at the head of the table, her face pale but her eyes sharp, calculating. Even in terror, she was thinking, analyzing, looking for an angle. "You." The gunman swung the Glock toward her. "Claire Donovan, we need to talk about accountability." "I don't know what you want," Claire said, her voice remarkably steady. "But this building has security that I already neutralized." The gunman laughed, bitter and cold. "I know this building better than you think, Ms. Donovan. I know its security rotations, its blind spots, its weaknesses. I know a lot of things, like how many safety violations you've buried, how many lives you've crushed for profit margins." Claire's jaw tightened. "If you have a grievance, there are legal channels." "Legal channels?" The gunman's voice cracked with rage. "You mean like the ones that ignored my wife? The ones that stamped too costly on the safety reports that could have saved her? The ones that paid off inspectors and buried complaints?" Ethan, still pressed against the wall near the shattered door, felt his heart stop. The words, the pain in that voice, the specific accusations, this wasn't random. This was personal. This was about the factory, about Anna. "My wife died in your factory," the gunman continued, stepping closer to Claire. His hand shook slightly. Emotion or adrenaline, hard to tell. "She died because you chose profit over people. Because board meetings like this one decided her safety equipment was too expensive, that proper ventilation would hurt the quarterly earnings." Harold Benton, still crouched behind his chair, whispered urgently to Victor Hale. "He's talking about the Riverside plant. The explosion, 5 years ago." "Shut up, Harold," Victor hissed back. But the gunman heard. His weapon swung toward them. "Oh, you remember? That's touching. You remember the 43 people you killed? The families you destroyed? Tell me, do you remember their names? Do you ever think about them when you're cashing your bonuses?" "Listen," Claire said, taking a careful step forward. Her voice had shifted, less authoritative, more human. "I understand you're in pain. I understand you've lost someone. But this isn't— You understand?" The gunman laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You understand nothing. You live in your glass tower, making decisions that kill people you never see. People like my wife, people like me. We're just numbers to you, just costs to be managed." He raised the gun, pointing it directly at Claire's chest. So let me make you understand. Let me make you a number. Time slowed. Ethan saw the gunman's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the microscopic shift in his stance, saw the intention crystallize into action, and in that frozen moment, Ethan Cole, the invisible janitor, the ghost nobody noticed, made a choice. He didn't think about it, didn't calculate odds or weigh consequences. He just moved. 3 years of pushing mop buckets had kept him stronger than he looked. His reflexes, dulled by grief and routine, suddenly sharpened to crystal clarity. His body remembered what his mind had forgotten: how to move with purpose, with speed, with absolute commitment. He crossed the 12 feet between the wall and Claire Donovan in less than 2 seconds. The gun cracked. The sound was enormous, a physical thing that punched the air. And Ethan's body, thrown forward by momentum and choice, intercepted the bullet meant for Claire. The impact was fire and ice simultaneously. The 9mm round hit him high on the left shoulder, the force spinning him partially around. He felt it, the punch, the burning, the immediate wrongness of metal tearing through flesh and muscle. His legs buckled. The polished marble rushed up to meet him. He hit the floor hard, his head cracking against the stone he'd buffed to perfection just an hour earlier. Blood began to pool beneath him, spreading across the marble like spilled paint. Dark, thick, obscenely red against the white stone. Through the ringing in his ears, Ethan heard chaos. Screaming, running footsteps, the gunman shouting something. More shots. No, those were from the doors. Security had arrived, late but armed. More shouting. A body hitting the floor. Not his. The gunman. But all of that was distant, muffled, like listening to the world from underwater. What he felt clearly was hands on his chest, small hands, pressing down on his shoulder with desperate strength. Claire Donovan's face swam into focus above him. Her perfect composure had shattered. Her hands were red with his blood. Her eyes were wide with something he'd never seen in them before. Genuine fear. Not for herself, but for him. "Stay with me," she was saying, her voice breaking. "Stay with me. Oh God, stay with me. What's your name? Tell me your name." Ethan tried to speak, but his mouth filled with copper. He coughed, tasted blood. "Ethan," he managed. "Ethan Cole." "Ethan." "Okay. Ethan, look at me. Keep looking at me." She pressed harder on his shoulder. Someone threw her a jacket and she wadded it against the wound. "Why did you do that? Why did you—" "My daughter," Ethan whispered. The boardroom was getting darker, the edges of his vision closing in like curtains. "Lily, she's at St. Catherine's School. Someone needs to pick her up at 3. Tell her—" "You're going to tell her yourself," Claire said fiercely. Tears were streaming down her face, cutting tracks through blood spatter. "Do you hear me? You're going to be fine. The ambulance is coming. You're going to be fine." Ethan tried to smile. "Your boardroom, sorry about the mess. I just cleaned it." "Shut up about the boardroom." Claire was sobbing now, pressing her blood-soaked hands against him. "Why? Why would you do that? You don't even know me." But Ethan's eyes were closing. The darkness was warm, almost comfortable. He thought about Lily, about Anna, about the 3 years he'd spent invisibly watching, learning, documenting, 3 years of being a ghost with a purpose. "I know you," he whispered. "I know everything." And then the darkness took him. The last thing he heard was Claire Donovan screaming for help, her voice raw and broken, begging a janitor not to die. The ambulance arrived 4 minutes later. Ethan was unconscious by the time they loaded him onto the stretcher, his vital signs crashing. Claire rode with him, still covered in his blood, refusing to leave despite the paramedics' protests. She held his hand the entire way to County Memorial, feeling his pulse flutter like a dying bird beneath her fingers. The gunman, Michael Torres, died on the boardroom floor. 2 shots from security, 1 to the chest, 1 to the head. He was 45 years old, a widower, a father of 2, former mechanical engineer, current warehouse worker. His wife, Maria Torres, had died 5 years ago in an explosion at the Riverside plant. She'd been 38. In Michael's pocket, police found a list, 14 names, all executives and board members of Donovan Industries. Claire's name was circled in red. In his car, they found documents, safety reports, denied requests, memos with signatures, evidence of systematic negligence that had been buried so deep nobody was supposed to ever find it. But Michael Torres had found it. And so had someone else. Someone who'd spent 3 years invisibly cataloging every dark corner of Donovan Industries. Someone who'd just taken a bullet for the CEO of the company that killed his wife. Claire sat in the surgical waiting room for 7 hours. She didn't change clothes, didn't wash the blood from her hands, didn't take the phone calls from board members or lawyers or crisis management consultants. She just sat, staring at her hands, feeling the weight of a question she couldn't escape. Why would he save me? At 4:37 p.m., a surgeon emerged. Dr. Sarah Chen, 40-something, with kind eyes and exhausted shoulders. "Are you family?" Dr. Chen asked. "No, I'm..." Claire hesitated. What was she? The person he'd saved? The CEO of the company that killed his wife? "I'm Claire Donovan. He saved my life." Dr. Chen studied her for a long moment. "He's stable. The bullet missed major arteries but did significant muscle damage. He lost a lot of blood. The next 24 hours are critical." "Can I see him?" "He's sedated. Won't be conscious until tomorrow at the earliest." Dr. Chen paused. "There's a little girl in the pediatric ward, his daughter. She was brought in when she heard about the shooting. She's been asking about him." Claire felt something crack in her chest. "He told me about her, right before he passed out. He told me to tell her..." "Tell her what?" "That's the thing. He didn't finish." Claire looked at her bloody hands. He spent his last conscious moments worried about his daughter being picked up from school on time. What kind of man? "A good man," Dr. Chen said softly. "A father who's lost too much already. His wife died 5 years ago. Did you know that?" Claire nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to." His daughter has chronic respiratory issues from environmental exposure. She's been in and out of this hospital a dozen times. He works 2 jobs to pay for her treatment. Dr. Chen's expression hardened slightly. "And before you ask, yes, we know who you are. This hospital has seen a lot of cases from your factory district. A lot of families like the Coles dealing with the consequences of corporate decisions." The accusation hung in the air, professional courtesy barely concealing deeper judgment. "Where is she?" Claire asked quietly. "His daughter. Pediatric ward, 3rd floor, room 314. But Ms. Donovan? She's 8 years old and she's terrified. Be careful with her." Claire took the elevator to the 3rd floor, still wearing her blood-stained suit. The pediatric ward was painted in cheerful colors that felt obscene given the circumstances. Cartoon animals smiled from the walls. A television played some animated movie nobody was watching. Room 314 had the door partially open. Claire stood outside for a long moment, listening. She could hear soft crying, a child trying to be brave and failing. She knocked gently. "Hello, Lily?" The crying stopped immediately. Are you here about my dad?" Claire pushed the door open slowly. Lily Cole was smaller than she'd expected. Thin, almost fragile, with dark curls that framed a face too serious for 8 years old. She wore hospital clothes. They were treating her for an asthma attack triggered by stress, and clutched a worn stuffed rabbit that had clearly been loved nearly to death. Her eyes, her mother's eyes, Claire would later learn, fixed on Claire with desperate hope. "Is my dad okay? Please, is he okay?" Claire crossed the room and knelt beside the bed, not caring that she was leaving bloody footprints on the linoleum. "He's alive, honey. He's in surgery, but the doctor says he's going to be okay." Lily burst into tears, clutching the rabbit. "He saved someone? They said he saved someone and got hurt?" "He saved me," Claire said quietly. "Your dad is a hero." "He's always a hero," Lily said fiercely, wiping her eyes. "He works so hard. He's always tired, but he never complains. He makes me breakfast and walks me to school and reads to me every night, even when he's so tired he can barely stand. He's the best dad in the whole world." Claire felt tears burning her own eyes. "I believe you. Are you the person he saved?" Lily studied her, taking in the expensive suit, the blood, the exhaustion. "You're important, right? That's why someone tried to hurt you?" I'm, yes, I'm the CEO of Donovan Industries. Lily's expression changed, just a flicker, but Claire saw it. Recognition and something darker. Fear, anger, pain. That's the company where my mom worked, Lily said carefully. Before she died. The room suddenly felt very cold. What did you say? My mom, Anna Cole, she worked at your factory, the one that exploded. Lily's voice was matter of fact, the way children speak about tragedies they've learned to live with. I was 3. I don't remember her much, just that she smelled like lavender and used to sing to me. Claire couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. Your father, Ethan Cole, he works for me. He's been working for me for 3 years. I know. He took the job after Mom died. He said it was temporary, but we needed the money. Lily clutched her rabbit tighter. He doesn't talk about it much, but sometimes I hear him crying at night. He thinks I'm asleep, but I hear him. He says Mom's name, and he says, I'm sorry, over and over. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was devastating. Ethan Cole, mechanical engineer, had taken a job as a janitor at the company that killed his wife. He'd spent 3 years invisible, watching, learning, and today, when a gunman came seeking vengeance for the exact same tragedy, Ethan had saved the life of the CEO responsible. Why? Lily, Claire said carefully, do you know why your dad took a bullet for me? Why he would save the person who runs the company that your mom worked for? Lily looked at her with eyes older than 8 years. Because that's what good people do. They don't punish people for mistakes. My dad says everyone deserves a chance to be better. He says Mom would want us to be kind, not angry. Claire covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to sob. This child, this beautiful, fragile child, was teaching her lessons about mercy and grace while sitting in a hospital bed in clothes stained with her father's blood. Your dad is very wise, Claire managed. Yeah. Lily smiled slightly. He really is. Then her face crumpled again. But I'm scared. What if he doesn't wake up? What if he leaves me like Mom did? Claire reached out and took Lily's small hand. I'm going to make sure he's okay. I promise you. Whatever it takes, whatever resources this hospital needs, whatever your dad needs, I'm going to make sure he comes home to you. Why? Lily asked simply. You don't know us. Because your dad gave me the most precious gift anyone can give. He gave me my life. Claire squeezed her hand gently. And because I'm starting to realize that I owe him a lot more than just gratitude. I owe him the truth. They sat together for a while, the CEO and the janitor's daughter holding hands in the antiseptic light. Outside, the city turned toward evening, unaware that in this moment, in this room, something fundamental was shifting. Claire Donovan, who'd built her identity on control and certainty, who'd never questioned the foundations of her empire, felt those foundations cracking. And in that crack, light was beginning to show through. At 11:47 p.m., Claire finally left the hospital. She'd waited until Lily fell asleep, still clutching her rabbit, still wearing the worry on her sleeping face. Her driver brought the car around. Mitchell, 60 years old, former Marine, had driven for her father before her. He'd seen her grow from a precocious child to a ruthless CEO, and he was one of the few people who still treated her like a human being. He said nothing about the blood, just opened the door. Home, Ms. Donovan? Claire looked at her reflection in the car window. She looked like she'd survived a war. No, the office. I need to get into the archives. Ma'am, it's almost midnight. I don't care. Claire's voice was steel. There's something I need to find, something that should have been found 5 years ago. The Riverside incident. Claire's head snapped toward him. You know about it? Mitchell's jaw tightened. Your father handled it personally, told me it was taken care of, told me the families were compensated, the investigation was thorough. I believed him. He paused. Was he lying? I don't know. That's what I need to find out. They drove through empty streets. The city at midnight was a different animal. Quieter, darker, more honest somehow. The glass towers that gleamed in daylight became shadows, their reflection showing only darkness. Donovan Industries at night was a tomb of metal and glass. Claire's keycard opened every door, her authority absolute even in the small hours. But she didn't go to her penthouse office. Instead, she took the service elevator down to the basement, to the archives, to the place where corporations buried their sins. The archives were a labyrinth of filing cabinets and boxes, a physical repository of decisions and documents dating back 60 years. Everything was supposed to be digitized, but the reality was messier. There were always things that slipped through cracks, things people wanted to forget, things like Riverside. Claire started pulling files. Her manicured nails, still carrying traces of Ethan's blood beneath them, tore through cardboard and paper. She worked methodically, using her executive access to get past locked cabinets, searching for anything related to the factory explosion. At 2:14 a.m., she found it. A banker's box, mislabeled and filed under the wrong year. Inside were reports that should have been seen by regulators, safety audits that should have triggered immediate action, memos that should have sent people to prison. Claire spread them across a dusty table, her heart hammering. Memo. Confidential. From Victor Hale, VP Operations. To Richard Donovan, CEO. Date, March 15th, 2020. Riverside Plant Safety Concerns. Richard, the floor supervisors are raising concerns about the ventilation system in Building C. They're claiming the chemical exposure levels are approaching OSHA limits. Engineering is requesting an immediate shutdown for retrofitting. Cost estimate for proper ventilation upgrade, $2.3 million. Cost estimate for temporary filtration system, $400K. Cost estimate for regulatory fines if we're caught, $150K. Production shutdown would cost us approximately $1.1 million in lost revenue per week. Recommendation? Implement temporary measures, avoid the shutdown, and manage the OSHA inspector schedule. We have a relationship with Inspector Carver. He's been cooperative in the past. Your call, but from an operational standpoint, we can't afford the production loss right now. Q2 numbers are already soft. Victor. And below it, in her father's handwriting. Approved. Keep production running. Handle the inspector. Claire felt sick. Her hands shook as she pulled another document. Incident report. Internal only. Date, September 3rd, 2001. Location, Riverside Plant, Building C. Incident type, chemical explosion. Fatalities, 43. Injuries, 17. Preliminary assessment, catastrophic failure of ventilation system led to chemical vapor accumulation. Ignition source appears to be electrical spark from aging wiring. System had been flagged for upgrade in March, but repairs were deferred for budget considerations. And clipped to it, another memo. From Harold Benton, CFO. To Richard Donovan, Victor Hale. Riverside Incident, Legal Strategy. Gentlemen, legal counsel advises the following. 1. Immediate settlement offers to all families, fast, generous enough to prevent lawsuits, but with NDAs attached. 2. Full cooperation with initial investigation, but strategic management of information flow. 3. Retirement of all internal documents that show prior knowledge of system issues. 4. Position this as tragic accident rather than negligence. Total projected cost, 38 million. Settlements, legal fees, facility repairs. Projected cost if negligence is proven, $200 plus, punitive damages, criminal liability, regulatory sanctions. We need to move fast and quiet. Victor, your team needs to sanitize all documentation related to the March safety requests. Harold, work with counsel on the settlement strategy. This doesn't leave this office. Harold, Claire read it 3 times, hoping the words would change. They didn't. Her father, the man who'd taught her about business, about leadership, about legacy, had knowingly allowed unsafe conditions to continue, had prioritized profit over people. And when those people died, he'd covered it up. And she'd inherited this. She'd been so focused on building the company bigger, stronger, more profitable, that she'd never questioned the foundation, never looked down into the darkness beneath the gleaming tower. Anna Cole's name appeared multiple times in the victim list. Age 38, mechanical systems operator, mother of one. Next to some names were notations about settlement payments. Next to Anna Cole's name, no settlement, spouse refuses NDA, lawyer threats, monitor situation. Ethan hadn't taken the money, hadn't signed the silence. He'd taken a job in the building instead. Put on a janitor's uniform and walked into the heart of the beast. And he'd waited, watched, documented. Claire found more. Photographs of safety violations, copies of ignored complaints, evidence of bribed inspectors. Someone had been building a case, piece by piece, hiding it in plain sight within the archives themselves. The handwriting on the folder labels was neat, methodical, patient. It was Ethan's handwriting. For 3 years, the ghost janitor had been building a revolution in the basement of his enemy's tower. And then, when another victim's widower came seeking violent justice, Ethan had chosen mercy instead. Claire sat in the darkness of the archives, surrounded by evidence of corporate murder, and finally understood. Ethan Cole hadn't saved her despite who she was. He'd saved her because of who she could be. He'd seen past the CEO to the person. He'd given her the most devastating gift possible, the chance to be better than her father, the chance to choose truth over profit, the chance to be worth saving. She picked up her phone with trembling fingers and called her head of security. "This is Donovan. I need you to seal the archives. Nothing leaves this room without my personal authorization, and I need you to arrange an emergency board meeting for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Full attendance, no exceptions." "Ms. Donovan, it's 3 a.m. I'm aware of the time. Make it happen, and call legal. I need Harvey Steinberg in my office at 8. Tell him to bring his litigation team." She paused. "And his conscience, if he can find it." She hung up and sat in the silence, staring at the evidence of her family's sins. Outside, somewhere in the sleeping city, a janitor lay unconscious in a hospital bed, his daughter curled up in another room, both of them broken by the same machine. But Claire Donovan was awake now, truly awake, for the first time in her life. And the reckoning was coming. The dawn broke over the city like a judgment, pale and cold. Claire Donovan hadn't slept. She'd spent the hours before sunrise in her office shower, scrubbing Ethan Cole's blood from beneath her fingernails, watching the water run pink then clear, wishing she could wash away guilt as easily as evidence. But some stains went deeper than skin. By 7:30, she stood before her floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city wake up. Somewhere down there, in County Memorial Hospital, a man who should hate her was fighting for his life. And his daughter, fragile and afraid, was waiting for a father who might never come home. Claire's reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Her hair was pulled back severely, her suit impeccable, armor rebuilt, the CEO mask back in place. But her eyes told a different story. They'd seen too much in the last 12 hours. Seen behind the curtain, seen the rot. Her phone buzzed. Harvey Steinberg, her chief legal counsel. "I'm here, conference room B. And Claire, I brought the team like you asked, but I need to know what this is about. The board is furious about the emergency meeting. Victor Hale has already called me twice, and Harold Benton is threatening—" "Good," Claire cut him off. "Let them threaten. Let them be furious. I'll see you in 10 minutes. She hung up before he could respond and picked up the banker's box from her desk. It was heavier than it should be, weighted with more than just paper. Inside was evidence that could destroy everything her father had built, everything she'd inherited, everything that needed to burn. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. She watched the numbers descend, each floor a countdown to a confrontation that would define her. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, lessons from childhood. "In business, Claire, you protect the bottom line, always. People are sympathetic, but profits are what keep the lights on. Never forget that." She'd never questioned it, never thought to look beneath the philosophy to see what it justified. The conference room was full. Harvey Steinberg stood at the head of the table, flanked by 3 associates who looked like they'd been dragged from their beds, which they probably had been. Harvey himself was 62, silver-haired, with the kind of expensive lawyer face that could argue anything with equal conviction. He'd worked for her father for 30 years. Claire, he attempted a smile. I'm glad you're all right. Yesterday was traumatic. Perhaps we should postpone the board meeting, give you time to recover. I'm not postponing anything. Claire set the box on the table with a heavy thud. And I'm not recovering from yesterday. I'm waking up from the last 5 years. Harvey's smile flickered. I'm not sure I follow. Riverside. Claire opened the box and began pulling out documents, spreading them across the polished table like evidence at a crime scene. The factory explosion, September 2020. 43 dead. Do you remember it, Harvey? The room went very quiet. The associates exchanged nervous glances. Of course, Harvey said carefully. Tragic accident. We settled with all the families. Your father handled it personally, made sure everyone was taken care of. Did he? Claire slid a memo across the table. Then why does this document, dated 6 months before the explosion, show that my father and Victor Hale knowingly deferred critical safety repairs to protect quarterly profits? Harvey picked up the memo. His face went pale as he read. Where did you get this? From our own archives, where it's been sitting for 5 years, along with dozens of other documents that prove systematic negligence. Documents that prove my father, Victor, Harold, and probably half the board knew that plant was a death trap and chose to do nothing. One of the associates, a young woman named Rachel Kim, leaned forward to read over Harvey's shoulder. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror. This is, Ms. Donovan, if this is accurate, this isn't just negligence. This is criminally reckless. This is manslaughter. 43 counts, Claire said quietly. 1 for each person who died, including Anna Cole. Harvey's head snapped up. Cole, the janitor who saved you yesterday, his wife died at Riverside? She did. And he's been working in this building for 3 years, quietly documenting everything, building a case against us while we walked past him like he was invisible. Claire's voice hardened. The man who took a bullet for me yesterday had every reason to let me die, every reason to want me dead. But he saved me anyway. And now I need to know, are you going to help me make this right, or are you going to do what my father did and bury it? Harvey set the memo down carefully, his lawyer's mind already working through implications and consequences. Claire, if this comes out, it will destroy the company. Criminal charges, civil suits, regulatory sanctions, the stock will crash, the board will revolt. Everything your father built was built on mass graves, Claire interrupted. I don't care about protecting it anymore. I care about the truth. The truth is expensive. Harvey's tone shifted, becoming clinical. The family's already settled. They signed NDAs. We can't be sued again for the same incident. Yes, these documents are damning, but they're also 5 years old. The statute of limitations on most charges has passed. From a legal standpoint, the smart move is to keep this buried. Anna Cole's family never settled, Claire said. Her husband refused, which means legally we still have exposure there. And morally? She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Morally, I don't give a damn about the statute of limitations. Those people died because we chose money over their lives. And I'm the face of that choice now. I'm the one who has to look Ethan Cole's 8-year-old daughter in the eye and explain why her mother isn't coming home. Rachel spoke up hesitantly. Ms. Donovan, if you want to do this right, we need to be strategic. Full disclosure of these documents without proper framing could trigger a firestorm. We need to control the narrative. I'm not interested in controlling the narrative. I'm interested in the truth. The truth can be told in different ways, Rachel persisted. We can take this to the authorities, yes, but we should also consider going public ourselves first. A press conference. Full transparency. Acknowledge the wrongdoing, announce reforms, commit to restitution for the families. Show that new leadership is taking responsibility. Harvey shook his head. That's suicide. The board will remove you before you reach the podium. Let them try. Claire's voice was steel. I control 47% of the voting shares. My father made sure I had enough to maintain control. They can threaten all they want, but they can't remove me without a supermajority. They can make your life hell. They can tie you up in legal challenges for years. They can... The door burst open. Victor Hale strode in, his face flushed with anger, Harold Benton right behind him. Both men radiated fury and entitlement in equal measure. "What the hell is this, Claire?" sighed. Victor's voice could have stripped paint. "An emergency board meeting called for 9 a.m. with no agenda? Security sealing the archives? What are you playing at?" Claire stood slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch. Then she smiled, a cold, dangerous expression her father would have recognized. "I'm playing at being CEO, which, last I checked, is my job, not yours. Your job is to run this company, not run it into the ground." Harold stepped forward, jabbing a finger toward her. "We've heard rumors about what you were doing last night. Digging through old files, making accusations. If you're trying to revisit Riverside, I'm not trying to revisit it. I'm exposing it." Claire picked up the memo with her father's handwriting and held it up. "Tell me, Victor, when you wrote this recommendation to my father, the one suggesting we bribe an OSHA inspector rather than fix a ventilation system, did you think about the people breathing those chemicals? Or were you only thinking about the quarterly numbers?" Victor's face went from red to white. "That's privileged corporate communication. You have no right. I have every right. This company killed 43 people through willful negligence. And you," she turned to Harold, "you orchestrated the cover-up, paid off families to keep them quiet, destroyed evidence. You turned a tragedy into a line item." "We protected this company," Harold said coldly. "We did what was necessary to preserve jobs, protect shareholders, maintain stability. Your father understood that. He made the hard decisions so you wouldn't have to." "He made criminal decisions." Claire's voice cracked like a whip. "And I'm done pretending they were anything else." Victor laughed, a harsh sound. "You self-righteous child. You think you can just tear down everything because your conscience suddenly woke up? You think the board will let you commit corporate suicide because a janitor took a bullet for you?" "His name is Ethan Cole." Claire stepped toward Victor, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "And his wife's name was Anna. She was 38 years old. She had a daughter. She went to work at our factory, trusting that we valued her safety. And we killed her because upgrading a ventilation system cost more than we wanted to spend. It was a cost-benefit analysis. It was murder." Claire's eyes blazed. "And you're going to answer for it." Harold moved between them, his lawyer's instincts activating. "Claire, you need to think very carefully about what you're doing. If you take this public, you're not just destroying careers, you're destroying livelihoods. This company employs 17,000 people. How many of them lose their jobs if we go under? How many families suffer because you wanted to feel morally superior?" It was a good argument, a compelling argument, the kind of utilitarian logic that made sense in boardrooms where people were numbers and suffering was abstract. But Claire had held Ethan Cole's hand while his blood pooled on marble, had looked into Lily Cole's terrified eyes, had seen the human cost of those cost-benefit analyses. "Those 17,000 employees," she said quietly, "deserve to work for a company that won't kill them for profit. They deserve leadership that sees them as people, not line items. And if this company can't survive without cutting corners that cost lives, then it doesn't deserve to survive." "You're insane," Victor said flatly. "The board will never support this." "Then I'll go to the authorities alone. I'll hand over every document. I'll testify personally." Claire's voice was absolute. "This ends today, one way or another." Harvey cleared his throat. "Claire, as your counsel, I strongly advise against any unilateral action. If you truly want justice, let me build a proper case. Work with prosecutors. Do this right." "How long would that take?" "Months, maybe years. These cases are complex." "Ethan Cole doesn't have years. His daughter is sick because she grew up breathing the same chemicals that killed her mother. Every day we delay is another day those conditions continue somewhere else. Another day we prioritize process over people." Rachel spoke up again, her voice thoughtful. "There might be a middle path. If we approach the district attorney ourselves with full cooperation and full disclosure, we can show good faith. We acknowledge wrongdoing. We volunteer evidence. We commit to institutional reform. It won't prevent prosecution, but it shows we're serious about accountability." "It also shows weakness," Harold snapped. "It invites every plaintiff's lawyer in the country to sue us. It destroys our market position. It's the right thing to do," Claire interrupted, "which apparently is a novel concept in this building." Victor's eyes narrowed. "You know what I think? I think this isn't about justice. This is about the janitor, You've developed some kind of savior complex because he saved your life. You're making emotional decisions that will cost thousands of people their jobs. I'm making moral decisions that should have been made 5 years ago. Morality is a luxury we can't afford. Then what's the point? Claire's voice rose, passion breaking through her control. What's the point of any of this if all we're building is a machine that crushes people? My father used to say business was about legacy. What legacy is this? What do we leave behind except broken families and buried secrets? The room fell silent. Even Victor seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Harvey finally spoke, his voice heavy. Claire, I've known you since you were 10 years old. I watched you grow up in this company. Your father was my friend, and I'm telling you, as someone who cares about you, this will break you. The legal battles, the public scrutiny, the betrayals that will come from people you trust. Are you ready for that? Claire thought about Ethan Cole, unconscious in a hospital bed. About Lily Cole, clutching her rabbit and trying to be brave. About Anna Cole, who'd never come home from work because profit margins mattered more than ventilation systems. I'm ready, she said simply. Make the call to the DA's office. Tell them we're coming in this afternoon with evidence of criminal negligence in the Riverside explosion. Tell them we're cooperating fully. Claire, that's not a request, Harvey. That's an order. She turned to Victor and Harold. You're both suspended, effective immediately. Pending criminal investigation, you're not to enter this building or access any company systems. Security will escort you out. Victor's face purpled. You can't. I can. And I am. Get out of my building. For a moment, she thought Victor might actually attack her. His fists clenched, his body coiled with rage. But Harold put a hand on his arm, pulling him back. This isn't over, Harold said coldly. We'll see you at the board meeting. And Claire, you just made the biggest mistake of your career. They left, their footsteps echoing like gunshots in the marble corridor. When the door closed, Claire's legs nearly gave out. She gripped the edge of the table, suddenly aware of how much she was shaking. Rachel was beside her in an instant. Miss Donovan, are you all right? I just declared war on my own board. Yes, you did. Rachel's voice held something like admiration. That took courage. Or insanity, Harvey muttered. Claire, the board meeting is in 90 minutes. They're going to come at you with everything they have. We need to prepare. No. Claire straightened, forcing steel back into her spine. Before the meeting, I'm going to the hospital. There's someone I need to see. Harvey frowned. The janitor? Claire, your priority right now should be Ethan Cole. Claire's voice was firm. His name is Ethan Cole, and my priority is making sure he knows that his wife's death meant something, that it's going to mean something. She left them there, walking out of the conference room with her head high and her heart hammering. The elevator ride up to her office felt surreal, like moving through a dream or a nightmare. She wasn't sure which. In her office, she changed into fresh clothes. Still professional, but softer somehow. Less armor, more human. She grabbed her phone and car keys, then paused at her father's photo on the credenza. Richard Donovan, stern and confident, forever frozen in his prime. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered, but I can't be you. I won't be you. She turned the photo face down and walked out. The drive to County Memorial took 20 minutes. Morning traffic was heavy, the city flowing with people heading to jobs and lives and routines. None of them knew that in a hospital bed, a janitor was rewriting the rules of power. That mercy was becoming revolution. The hospital smelled the same as it had last night, antiseptic and exhaustion. Claire took the elevator to the ICU, her credentials getting her past the nurse's station. Dr. Chen was just emerging from a patient room. Ms. Donovan, the surgeon looked surprised. I didn't expect to see you back so soon. How is he? Stable? Conscious as of about an hour ago. Vitals are strong. He's going to recover, though he'll need physical therapy for the shoulder. Dr. Chen paused. He's been asking about his daughter. Can I see him? 5 minutes. He needs rest. Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. Whatever you need to say to him, make it count. The ICU room was small, machines beeping softly, monitors displaying the mathematics of survival. And in the bed, propped up slightly, was Ethan Cole. He looked smaller than he had yesterday, more vulnerable. His left shoulder was heavily bandaged, tubes and wires connected him to various machines, and his face was pale with the aftermath of trauma and blood loss. But his eyes were clear and watching her as she entered. "Ms. Donovan." His voice was rough, probably from intubation. "You're alive. Because of you." Claire approached the bed slowly, suddenly unsure. "Mr. Cole, I don't know how to thank you for what you did." "You don't have to thank me. I just did what was right. You took a bullet for me. You nearly died. That's more than just what was right." Claire pulled a chair closer to the bed, sitting so they were eye level. "I met your daughter last night, Lily. She's beautiful, brave." Ethan's expression cracked, emotion flooding through. "Is she okay? They told me she had an asthma attack, that she's fine. Scared for you, but fine. I sat with her for a while." Claire's throat tightened. "She told me about her mother, about Anna." The name hung in the air between them like a ghost. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. "So you know." "I know Anna worked at Riverside. I know she died in the explosion. And I know—" Claire's voice broke. "I know my company killed her. My father, my board. They knew that plant was dangerous and they did nothing. I found the documents last night, all of them. The safety reports they ignored, the repairs they refused, the cover-up." Ethan opened his eyes, studying her face. "You didn't know." "No. But that doesn't matter, does it? Ignorance doesn't absolve me. I should have looked deeper, should have questioned more. I inherited an empire built on negligence, and I just accepted it." "You were trusting your father." "My father was a murderer." The words tasted like ash. "And I almost became one too, by continuing his work." Ethan shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. "That's why I saved you." Claire looked up confused. "What?" "You asked yesterday why I would save you. That's why." Ethan's voice was quiet but intense. "Because you're not your father. Because I've watched you for 3 years, Ms. Donovan. I've seen how you work. You're tough, yes, demanding, but you're not cruel, you're not callous, you don't see people as disposable." "I didn't see you at all," Claire said bitterly. "I walked past you every day and never once really looked. Most people don't. That's not personal. It's just how things are." Ethan attempted a small smile. "But that's also how I was able to see everything, to document everything. Nobody watches the janitor. Nobody thinks about what he might be hearing, seeing, recording. You were building a case against us. I was building evidence. I didn't know what I'd do with it. Some days I wanted to burn the whole place down. Other days I just wanted to understand why. Why Anna had to die. Why they chose profit over her life." He paused. "And then yesterday happened. Michael Torres, the gunman. Did you know him?" "We'd met a few times, support groups for families affected by the explosion. His wife Maria died next to Anna. Same shift, same section." Ethan's expression darkened. "He was angrier than me, more broken. I understood him, but I couldn't become him." "Why not? God knows you had every right." "Because of Lily." Ethan's voice was simple, absolute. "Anna's last words to me, in the hospital before she died. She made me promise to be better than the anger, to raise our daughter with love, not hate. She said, 'Don't let them take your heart too.'" Claire felt tears sliding down her face. "Mr. Cole, Ethan, please, just Ethan." "Ethan," Claire whispered, "I'm going to make this right. I'm going to the district attorney today with all the evidence. Criminal charges are coming for the people responsible, and I'm going to make sure you and Lily are taken care of, whatever you need, medical care, housing, education. I don't want charity. It's not charity, it's restitution. It's justice." Claire leaned forward. "Your wife died because my company failed her. Your daughter is sick because of environmental conditions we created. The least I can do is help." Ethan studied her for a long moment. "The least you can do is change the company. Make sure it never happens again. That's what Anna would have wanted. Not revenge. Reform. I'm trying. I suspended 2 board members this morning. I'm about to face a board meeting that might end with me being removed as CEO, but I don't care anymore. I'd rather lose everything doing what's right than keep it all by doing what's easy. That's brave. That's terrifying, Claire corrected. I'm not brave. You're brave. What you did yesterday, throwing yourself in front of a bullet, that's courage. That was instinct. What you're doing, walking into that board meeting knowing what it might cost you, that's choosing courage. Ethan reached out his right hand, the one not connected to IVs. Thank you for caring enough to try. Claire took his hand gently, careful of the tubes and wires. His grip was warm, solid, real. Thank you for believing I'm worth saving. They sat like that for a moment, the CEO and the janitor, their hands joined across a divide that was finally starting to close. A nurse peeked in. I'm sorry, but Mr. Cole needs rest. Claire stood reluctantly. I'll come back. And I'll bring Lily if you want. She's desperate to see you. I'd love that. Ethan's eyes were already heavy with exhaustion. Miss Donovan? Claire? She turned at the door. Yes? When you face that board, remember, you're not just fighting for me or Lily or Anna. You're fighting for every person who goes to work trusting their employer values their life. That's bigger than one company. That's everything. Claire nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She left the room, her heels clicking softly on the hospital linoleum, carrying the weight of 43 ghosts and one living man's faith that she might actually make a difference. The board meeting started in 30 minutes. Somewhere in the building, Victor and Harold were probably gathering allies, preparing their counterattack. The battle for the soul of Donovan Industries was about to begin, but Claire wasn't afraid anymore. She'd looked into Ethan Cole's eyes and seen what real courage looked like, had held his daughter's hand and understood what was truly at stake. She wasn't fighting for a company anymore. She was fighting for the possibility that corporations could be more than profit machines, that leadership could mean something more than quarterly returns, that mercy could be stronger than greed. She was fighting for Anna's memory, for Lily's future, for the 17,000 employees who deserved better than to work for an empire built on graves. And she was going to win, or die trying. Either way, she'd finally be worthy of the man who'd taken a bullet for her. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, and Claire Donovan walked into the storm. The boardroom looked different in daylight. Yesterday's chaos had been cleaned away. The shattered door replaced, the blood scrubbed from marble that now gleamed with almost accusatory brightness. But Claire could still see it, could still see Ethan's body crumpled on the floor, his blood spreading like a crimson indictment of everything this room represented. 18 board members sat around the table, their faces ranging from concerned to openly hostile. The 2 empty seats where Victor and Harold should have been sat like missing teeth, a visible wound that everyone noticed but no one mentioned. Not yet. Claire took her seat at the head of the table, the CEO's throne her father had occupied for 37 years. She set the banker's box beside her chair, its presence drawing eyes like a bomb everyone knew was about to detonate. Margaret Chen, the board's senior independent director, cleared her throat. She was 71, sharp as a scalpel, and had served on the board since before Claire was born. Claire, I think we all want to start by saying how relieved we are that you're safe. Yesterday was traumatic for everyone. Thank you, Margaret. Claire's voice was steady, professional. It was certainly illuminating. Thomas Brennan, head of the audit committee, leaned forward. He was 56, perpetually worried, the kind of man who saw liability in everything. Before we begin, I need to address the elephant in the room. Why are Victor and Harold not present? And why have we heard rumors that they were suspended? They were suspended because they're criminals. Claire let the words fall like stones into still water. And before this meeting ends, you're all going to understand exactly what I mean. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, shock and anger competing for dominance. Margaret raised her hand, calling for order like a judge with an unruly courtroom. That's quite an accusation, Claire. I hope you can substantiate it. I can. Claire stood, placing her hands on the table. 5 years ago, this company was responsible for an explosion at our Riverside manufacturing plant. 43 people died. 17 more were seriously injured. At the time, my father told me it was a tragic accident. that we'd cooperated fully with investigators, that all the families had been compensated. I believed him. She paused, looking at each face around the table. Some looked confused, others, 3, maybe 4, looked worried. They knew what was coming. I was wrong to believe him. Last night, I went through the archives. I found documents that prove the explosion wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of systematic negligence. Safety systems that were known to be failing, repairs that were requested and denied, warnings that were ignored because fixing the problems would have cost money and lost production time. Claire opened the box and began distributing copies of the documents, walking around the table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Victor Hale wrote this memo 6 months before the explosion, recommending we bribe an OSHA inspector rather than upgrade the ventilation system. My father approved it. Harold Benton coordinated the cover-up afterward, paying settlements with NDAs attached, destroying evidence, managing the information flow. Margaret took the papers with trembling hands, her face going pale as she read. Others were doing the same, the horror spreading around the table like contagion. This is... Thomas couldn't finish the sentence. Claire, if this is real, if these documents are authentic, they're real. They came from our own archives. They have signatures, dates, internal routing codes. They're completely authentic. Claire returned to her seat. And this morning, I informed our legal counsel that we'll be taking them to the district attorney this afternoon. We're cooperating fully with a criminal investigation. The room exploded again. This time, Margaret couldn't contain it. Board members were shouting, some at Claire, some at each other. Patricia Wong, who ran the compensation committee, was on her phone. David Martinez had gone white as paper. Order! Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone sit down and be quiet. She turned to Claire, her expression a mix of shock and something that might have been respect. You're serious about this? Completely serious. Do you understand what you're doing? The legal exposure alone could bankrupt us. Criminal charges against board members, civil suits that won't be bound by the old NDAs, regulatory sanctions, reputational damage. Margaret's voice was rising. You could destroy this company, destroy everything your father built. My father built this company on lies and buried bodies. Claire's voice was cold. If it can't survive without them, then it doesn't deserve to survive. Thomas stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. I can't be part of this. If you're seriously taking this to prosecutors, I need to retain personal counsel. I need to... Sit down, Thomas. Claire's voice cracked like a whip. You weren't on the board when this happened. You're not implicated, but if you walk out of this room right now, I'll assume you're choosing to protect the guilty rather than support reform, and I'll make sure everyone knows it. Thomas sat slowly, his face flushed with anger and fear. Jonathan Wright, the newest board member, and only 39, spoke up. Ms. Donovan, I appreciate your moral clarity, but we have a fiduciary duty to shareholders. We can't just commit corporate suicide because 43 people died? Claire interrupted. Because we killed them through negligence and then covered it up? At what point does our fiduciary duty include basic human decency? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Jonathan? That we should keep this buried? That protecting our stock price is more important than justice for the families we destroyed? Margaret held up a hand. Claire, no one is arguing against justice, but there are ways to handle this that don't involve self-immolation. We could settle privately, make restitution to the families without involving prosecutors. We could implement new safety standards, create oversight mechanisms. We could do what we should have done 5 years ago, you mean? Claire's laugh was bitter. And what happens the next time? What happens when the cost-benefit analysis says it's cheaper to risk lives than prevent deaths? Do we just cross our fingers and hope the next generation of leadership has better morals? We're trying to be practical. Anna Cole was practical. Claire's voice rose, passion breaking through her professional veneer. She went to work every day, trusted that we valued her safety, and died breathing toxic chemicals we knew were there. Her husband watched her suffocate in a hospital bed. Her daughter grew up without a mother and with chronic health issues from the same environmental exposure. Where's the practical solution for them? The room fell silent. Claire took a breath, forcing herself back under control. Yesterday, a man threw himself in front of a bullet to save my life. His name is Ethan Cole. He's the widower of Anna Cole, one of the 43 people we killed at Riverside. For 3 years, he's worked in this building as a janitor. He's cleaned our offices, emptied our trash, and been completely invisible to all of us. And while he was invisible, he was documenting everything, building evidence of our crimes. She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. He had every reason to let me die yesterday, every reason to want me dead. But he didn't. He saved me because he believed I could be better than my father, better than this company's history. And I'll be damned if I'm going to prove him wrong by doing exactly what my father did and choosing profit over justice. Patricia Wong spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. She was 54, a former prosecutor herself, and one of the few people on the board Claire genuinely respected. Claire, I admire what you're trying to do, truly, but you need to understand the realities. If this goes to criminal prosecution, Victor and Harold won't be the only ones affected. The company itself could face charges. We could lose government contracts, banking relationships, client trust. 17,000 employees could lose their jobs. I know the risks. Do you? Patricia leaned forward. Because I don't think you do. I've seen companies destroyed by scandals like this, even when they're trying to do the right thing. The market doesn't reward moral courage. It punishes uncertainty and risk. Our stock could drop 40–50%. We could become a takeover target. Vulture funds could strip us for parts. She paused. Your employees, the 17,000 people who depend on this company for their livelihoods, could end up victims of your moral crusade. The argument landed like a punch. Claire felt it, the weight of those 17,000 lives. It would be so easy to listen to Patricia, to find a middle path, to manage the situation quietly, make restitution privately, implement reforms without the public confession. But then she thought about Lily Cole, clutching her rabbit in a hospital bed, about Ethan's voice saying, "You're not just fighting for me or Lily or Anna. You're fighting for every person who goes to work trusting their employer values their life." You're right, Claire said quietly. I could destroy this company. I could cost people their jobs. I could fail spectacularly and publicly. But Patricia, what's the alternative? We keep doing what we've been doing? We protect the system that allowed 43 people to die? We send the message that if you're rich enough and powerful enough, you can literally get away with murder? She stood again, unable to sit still. My father used to tell me that business was about legacy, about building something that outlasts you. Well, I don't want his legacy. I don't want to be remembered as the CEO who protected profits at the cost of lives. I'd rather be remembered as the CEO who tried to do the right thing and failed than the one who did the wrong thing and succeeded. Margaret was watching her with an expression Claire couldn't quite read. Your father would be very disappointed in you right now. Good. Claire's voice was firm. Because if my father would be proud of this decision, I'd know I was making the wrong one. Thomas cleared his throat. What exactly are you proposing, Claire? Walk us through your plan. This afternoon, I'm meeting with the district attorney. I'm providing all the documents I found, along with a complete timeline of events. I'm offering full cooperation with any investigation. Claire counted off on her fingers. Tomorrow, I'm holding a press conference. Full disclosure, I'm going to publicly acknowledge what happened at Riverside, apologize to the families, and announce a complete restructuring of our safety and compliance operations. That's suicide, Jonathan muttered. I'm also announcing a restitution fund for the Riverside families, $20 million distributed through an independent administrator. No NDAs, no gag orders, just money that should have been spent on safety equipment being given to the people who suffered because we didn't spend it. Claire continued, and I'm implementing new safety protocols across all our facilities, independent inspections, worker safety committees with real authority, whistleblower protections, everything we should have had all along. David Martinez finally spoke. He was 62, had been her father's closest friend on the board, and hadn't said a word since the meeting started. Claire, I've known you since you were a little girl. I watched you grow up in this company. Your father loved you more than anything in this world. I know he did. Then don't destroy his memory like this. Don't make him a villain in some redemption story you're telling yourself. David's voice was thick with emotion. Richard made hard decisions. Maybe some of them were wrong, But he built this company from nothing. He created jobs, generated wealth, supported communities. You're about to destroy all of that because of one terrible mistake. Claire felt something break inside her chest. Uncle David, it wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern, a philosophy, a worldview that said profits mattered more than people, and that philosophy killed 43 human beings. Mistakes were made. Murder was committed. Claire's voice was gentle but absolute. I'm sorry. I know you loved him. I loved him too. But that doesn't change what he did. And it doesn't change what I have to do now. David stood slowly, his face gray. Then I can't support you. I'm sorry, Claire, but I can't be part of this. I'm resigning from the board, effective immediately. David, I won't vote against you. I won't fight you. But I can't help you destroy Richard's legacy. He picked up his briefcase. I hope you know what you're doing. He walked out, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Margaret let out a long breath. Anyone else planning a dramatic exit? Silence. The remaining board members looked at each other, at Claire, at the documents scattered across the table. Patricia spoke first. I'll stay. I don't agree with your methods, Claire, but I respect your principles. And someone needs to make sure this doesn't turn into a complete disaster. I'll stay too, Thomas said reluctantly, though I'm retaining personal counsel and I reserve the right to resign if the legal exposure becomes untenable. One by one, the others agreed. Some enthusiastically, seeing an opportunity to be on the right side of history. Others reluctantly, calculating that jumping ship now would look worse than riding out the storm. But they stayed. All except the four who'd been sitting very quietly. Raymond Foster, Diane Blackwell, Andrew Chen, and Susan Martinez. They'd served with her father. They'd been there when the decisions were made. What about you four? Claire asked quietly. Do you have something you'd like to say? Raymond stood. He was 70, gray-haired, and looked every day of it. I knew about Riverside. Not the specifics, but I knew something was being buried. Your father asked me to support his decisions, and I did, because I trusted him, because I believed he knew what was best for the company. He looked at the documents on the table. I was wrong. I should have asked questions, should have demanded transparency. I didn't, and people died because of it. So yes, Claire, I'll cooperate with your investigation. I'll resign from the board, and if there are criminal charges, I'll accept them. It's what I deserve. The other three followed suit, standing one by one, admitting complicity, offering resignations. Claire felt no satisfaction in their confessions, just tired grief for how completely corruption had rotted through the foundations of everything her father built. Thank you for your honesty, she said quietly. Your resignations are accepted. Clean out your offices by the end of the day. When they left, the board was down to 13 members. A slim majority, but enough. Margaret called for a formal vote on Claire's plan. It passed 9-4 with Patricia and 2 others abstaining. It wasn't unanimous, it wasn't pretty, but it was done. The meeting adjourned at noon. Claire returned to her office, emotionally exhausted and running on adrenaline and coffee. Her assistant, Jennifer, appeared in the doorway with a concerned expression. Miss Donovan, the district attorney's office called. They can see you at 3. And the hospital called. Mr. Cole's daughter is asking for you. Claire checked her watch. She had 2 hours before meeting with prosecutors. Tell them I'll be there. And Jennifer, start preparing a press release. We'll need it for tomorrow's conference. What should it say? The truth. All of it. The drive back to County Memorial felt surreal, like moving through water. Claire's phone kept ringing. Reporters who'd somehow already heard rumors, board members with second thoughts, lawyers with warnings. She ignored them all. Lily Cole was sitting up in her hospital bed when Claire arrived, looking stronger than she had the night before. Her color was better, her breathing easier, but her eyes still carried that too-old worry. Ms. Donovan! Lily's face lit up. Did you see my dad? Is he really okay? I saw him this morning. He's going to be fine. Claire sat in the chair beside the bed. He was asking about you, wants to see you as soon as the doctors say it's okay. They said maybe tomorrow, if my breathing stays good. Lily clutched her rabbit. He saved you. Everyone's saying he's a hero. He is a hero, the bravest man I've ever met. He's just my dad. Lily said simply. He's always brave. When Mom died, he didn't fall apart, even though I know he wanted to. He just kept going, kept taking care of me, kept working, even when he was so tired he could barely stand. He never gave up. Claire felt her throat tighten. Your mom would be very proud of him. And very proud of you. I don't remember her much. Just little things. Her voice, the way she smelled. Dad says I have her smile. Lily touched her face. Do you think that's true? That I look like her? I think you're beautiful, just like your dad said you are. Lily was quiet for a moment, then asked in a small voice, Are you going to help him? Really help him? Or are you just being nice because he saved you? The question was so direct, so painfully honest, that Claire had to take a moment before answering. I'm going to help him. And you. And every other family that was hurt by what my company did. I'm not just being nice, Lily. I'm trying to make things right. People always say they'll make things right, but then they don't. I know you've heard promises before, but I'm going to keep mine. Claire leaned forward. This afternoon, I'm going to talk to people who investigate crimes. I'm going to give them proof that my company did bad things, things that hurt your mom and a lot of other people. And tomorrow, I'm going to tell everyone what happened, the whole world, so that it can never happen again. Lily studied her with those serious, too old eyes. Will you get in trouble? Probably. My company might get in trouble too. Some people might lose their jobs. It's going to be hard. But you're doing it anyway? Yes. Why? Claire smiled sadly. Because your dad took a bullet for me. And before I met you, I thought that meant I owed him a debt. But now I realize it's more than that. He gave me a gift. He gave me the chance to be better, to build something worth saving instead of just protecting something rotten. And I'm not going to waste that gift. Lily thought about this, her small face serious. Then she held out her rabbit. This was my mom's. Dad gave it to me after she died. He said as long as I had it, part of her would always be with me. Claire took the worn stuffed animal carefully, reverently. It's beautiful. You can hold it, for luck. When you talk to those people who investigate crimes, Lily's voice was solemn. Mr. Rabbit helps when things are scary. Claire felt tears sliding down her face. Thank you, Lily. I'll take very good care of him. They sat together for a while, the CEO and the 8-year-old, sharing the kind of quiet understanding that transcends age and circumstance. Eventually, a nurse came to take Lily for tests, and Claire reluctantly said goodbye. She left the hospital carrying a child's stuffed rabbit and the weight of promises she had to keep. The district attorney's office was downtown, in a building that looked like Justice felt, gray, imposing, slightly intimidating. Claire arrived at 2:55, Harvey Steinberg beside her, both of them carrying boxes of documents. They were shown to a conference room where District Attorney Monica Reeves waited with 2 assistant DAs and a detective from the Major Crimes Unit. Reeves was 53, had a reputation for being tough but fair, and looked at Claire with sharp, assessing eyes. Ms. Donovan, Mr. Steinberg, thank you for coming in. Reeves gestured to seats across the table. I understand you have information about the Riverside factory explosion. We do. Claire set her box on the table. 5 years ago, my company's negligence resulted in 43 deaths. The leadership at the time knew about safety issues and chose not to address them. They then covered up evidence of that negligence and paid settlements to silence families. I have documentation of all of it. Reeves's eyebrows rose. That's quite a confession. It's the truth, and I'm here to cooperate fully with any investigation you want to open. One of the assistant DAs, a young man named Patterson, leaned forward. Ms. Donovan, I want to make sure you understand the implications of what you're doing. Anything you tell us can be used to prosecute individuals and the company itself. You might be providing evidence that could destroy your own business. I understand. And you're doing this voluntarily? You haven't been compelled by subpoena or search warrant? Completely voluntarily. I found this evidence last night. I'm bringing it to you this afternoon. No one forced me. Reeves and Patterson exchanged glances. The detective, a tired-looking man named Garcia, spoke up. In my 20 years doing this job, I've never had a CEO voluntarily hand over evidence of corporate manslaughter. Forgive me for being suspicious, but why are you really here? Claire thought about Ethan on the hospital bed, about Lily offering her rabbit for luck, about Anna Cole who'd never come home from work. Because it's right. Because 43 people are dead and someone needs to answer for it. And because if I don't do this, I'm just perpetuating the same system that killed them. Garcia studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, let's see what you've got. For the next 3 hours, Claire and Harvey walked them through everything. The memos showing prior knowledge of safety issues, the cost-benefit analyses that valued profit over lives, the cover-up documents, the settlement strategy designed to silence victims, every piece of evidence methodically presented and explained. Reeves listened carefully, asking sharp questions, taking detailed notes. Patterson was already calculating charges, whispering to his boss about negligent homicide, involuntary manslaughter, obstruction of justice. This is substantial, Reeves finally said. If verified, this is criminal negligence at the very least, possibly corporate manslaughter. We'll need to authenticate the documents, interview witnesses, build a complete case. That'll take time. I understand. I'll cooperate fully. So will our current legal team. We'll provide access to facilities, personnel, records, whatever you need. What about the individuals named in these documents? Victor Hale, Harold Benton, and Reeves checked her notes. Richard Donovan, your father. Obviously he's deceased, but the others? I suspended them this morning. They're aware they're under investigation. They'll lawyer up immediately, Patterson said. Probably already have. This is going to be a fight. I know, but I have resources too, and I have the truth. Claire met Reeves' eyes. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm not asking you to go easy on the company or on me if I'm implicated. I'm asking you to pursue justice, wherever it leads. Reeves sat back, studying Claire with an expression that might have been respect. Ms. Donovan, I've prosecuted white-collar crime for 15 years. I've seen a lot of wealthy people try to buy their way out of consequences. I've never seen one voluntarily walk into consequences. I don't know if you're incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. Probably both, Claire admitted, but I'm committed, whatever it takes. All right. Reeves stood, extending her hand. We'll open a formal investigation. Expect search warrants for your facilities within the week. Expect interviews with your executives and board members. And Ms. Donovan, expect this to get ugly. Because once this becomes public, everyone's going to have an opinion. The media, shareholders, employees, they're all going to judge you. Are you ready for that? Claire shook her hand firmly. I'm ready. I'm holding a press conference tomorrow morning. Full disclosure. By tomorrow afternoon, the whole world will know. Then God help you, Reeves said quietly. You're going to need it. The sun was setting when Claire finally left the DA's office, painting the city in shades of amber and shadow. Harvey walked beside her, unusually quiet. You did the right thing, he finally said. I want you to know that. Even if it costs us everything, you did the right thing. Thank you, Harvey. That means a lot. But Claire, he stopped at her car. It's going to cost us almost everything. Are you truly prepared for that? Claire thought about the question, about her father's empire crumbling, about her own reputation being destroyed, about the possibility of losing the company, her position, her carefully constructed life. Then she thought about Ethan Cole, who'd lost his wife, his career, his health, and still found the strength to save the person who represented everything that had been taken from him. I'm prepared, she said simply, because anything worth keeping will survive the truth, and anything that won't didn't deserve to exist in the first place. She drove home through the darkening city, Lily's rabbit sitting on the passenger seat beside her, a talisman against the storm that was coming. Tomorrow, she would face the world. Tomorrow, she would tell the truth and accept the consequences. But tonight, she would sleep for the first time in years with a clear conscience. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like victory. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m., but reporters started gathering outside Donovan Industries headquarters at dawn. News vans lined the street, satellite dishes pointed skyward like flowers seeking sun. By 9:30, the lobby was packed with journalists, cameras, and the electric tension of people who sensed blood in the water. Claire stood in her office, watching the crowd gather through her windows. She'd barely slept, running on coffee and determination, her speech written and rewritten a dozen times. Jennifer had tried to get her to eat something, but food felt impossible. Her stomach was a knot of nerves and resolve. Her phone buzzed, a text from Patricia Wong. "I'm here, front row. You can do this." Another from Harvey. "Legal team is ready for fallout. Whatever happens, we're with you." And one from an unknown number that made her breath catch. "Lily says to tell you Mr. Rabbit is rooting for you. So am I. Ethan." Claire touched the screen, feeling emotion threaten to overwhelm her carefully constructed composure. She'd visited Ethan again last night after leaving the DA's office. They talked for an hour, his voice getting stronger, his eyes clearer. He told her stories about Anna, about their courtship, their marriage, their dreams for Lily's future. He'd shared his wife's memory like a gift, trusting Claire with the weight of what had been lost. "She would have liked what you're doing," he'd said quietly. "Anna believed in second chances, in people choosing to be better. She would have said this took more courage than I showed yesterday. You took a bullet. You're taking on an empire. That's harder." Now, standing at her window watching the media circus below, Claire wondered if he was right. A bullet was quick. This was choosing to bleed slowly, publicly, while the world watched and judged. Jennifer appeared in the doorway. "It's time, Ms. Donovan. They're ready for you." Claire picked up her notes, then set them down again. She'd memorized every word, but more than that, she'd lived every word. She didn't need the paper. She needed her voice and her truth. "Let's go." The walk to the press room felt like a death march. Employees lined the hallways, their faces reflecting confusion, fear, support, anger, the whole spectrum of human reaction to watching their world tilt on its axis. Some nodded encouragement, others looked away. A few whispered, and Claire caught fragments. "She's destroying us." Finally, someone with integrity, "We're all going to lose our jobs." The press room had been set up in the main auditorium, a space that usually hosted shareholder meetings and corporate celebrations. Now it was filled with reporters who looked like sharks scenting blood. Cameras tracked Claire's entrance, flashes going off like lightning strikes. She took her place at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. Harvey and Patricia sat in the front row, flanked by the remaining board members who'd chosen to support her. In the back, she spotted several familiar faces from competing companies, probably here to watch Donovan Industries implode. Claire adjusted the microphone and took a breath. "Good morning. My name is Claire Donovan, CEO of Donovan Industries. I've called this press conference to make a public statement about events that occurred 5 years ago at our Riverside manufacturing plant, and to announce significant changes in how this company operates going forward." The room was absolutely silent. Every recorder was running, every camera focused. On September 3rd, 2020, an explosion at our Riverside facility killed 43 people and seriously injured 17 more. At the time, company leadership characterized this as a tragic accident. That characterization was a lie. The silence shattered. Reporters erupted with questions. Cameras clicked furiously. But Claire raised her hand and continued, her voice cutting through the noise. The explosion was not an accident. It was the inevitable result of systematic negligence by company leadership, including my father, Richard Donovan, who was CEO at the time. 6 months prior to the explosion, safety concerns about the facility's ventilation system were raised by floor supervisors and engineering staff. These concerns were documented in internal memos and reports. Leadership was informed that the ventilation system was failing and that chemical exposure levels were approaching dangerous limits. Claire's voice was steady, clinical, but inside she was screaming. Every word felt like betraying her father's memory, but she pushed forward. Despite these warnings, company leadership chose not to shut down production for necessary repairs. Internal documents show that this decision was made primarily for financial reasons. The cost of proper repairs and the production loss from facility shutdown were deemed too expensive. Instead, leadership approved temporary measures and, according to evidence I've uncovered, attempted to manage OSHA inspection schedules through inappropriate relationships with inspectors. A reporter from the Times stood up. "Ms. Donovan, are you saying your father bribed government inspectors?" "I'm saying that internal communications suggest improper influence was used to avoid regulatory oversight. The full extent will be determined by investigators." Claire's hands gripped the podium. What I can say definitively is that people died because profits were prioritized over safety. 43 human beings went to work trusting that their employer valued their lives. That trust was betrayed. Another reporter shouted, "What about the settlements? There were reports that families were compensated." Families were offered settlements with non-disclosure agreements attached. These settlements were part of a coordinated effort to prevent the truth from becoming public. The goal was not justice or restitution. The goal was damage control and legal insulation. Claire's voice hardened. One family refused to settle. The family of Anna Cole, one of the victims. Her husband, Ethan Cole, rejected the settlement because he wouldn't sign away his right to pursue the truth. For 3 years, Mr. Cole worked in this building, documenting evidence of what really happened, while we walked past him every day without seeing him. The room was riveted now, the human drama cutting through the corporate scandal. 2 days ago, a man named Michael Torres entered our boardroom with a gun. Mr. Torres was also a Riverside widower. His wife Maria died in the same explosion that killed Anna Cole. He came seeking violent justice for crimes he believed would never be prosecuted. And he nearly killed me. Claire paused, letting the weight settle. But Ethan Cole, the janitor we'd ignored for 3 years, the man whose wife we killed through negligence, threw himself in front of the bullet meant for me. He saved my life despite having every reason to let me die. Several reporters were openly emotional now. This wasn't just corporate scandal anymore. This was human tragedy and redemption colliding in real time. Mr. Cole is currently recovering from his injuries. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, who suffers chronic respiratory issues from environmental exposure in the factory district where they were forced to live after her mother's death, has been asking me a question I can't stop thinking about. She asked me, "Are you really going to help, or are you just being nice because he saved you?" Claire's voice broke slightly, but she pushed through. "I'm here today to answer that question, not just to Lily, but to every family that was affected by Riverside, to every employee of this company, to every person who's ever trusted a corporation to value their life over its bottom line." She looked directly into the cameras, knowing that somewhere, in a hospital room, Ethan and Lily might be watching. Yesterday, I provided the district attorney's office with all documentation I've uncovered regarding the Riverside incident. I have offered full cooperation with criminal investigations into the conduct of company leadership. I have suspended and accepted the resignations of board members who were complicit in either the original negligence or the subsequent cover-up. And I am announcing today that Donovan Industries is establishing a $20 million restitution fund for Riverside families, administered by an independent trustee, with no non-disclosure agreements or legal restrictions attached. The reporters were scribbling frantically, phones out, already filing stories. Additionally, effective immediately, Donovan Industries is implementing comprehensive safety reforms across all facilities. These reforms include mandatory independent safety audits, worker safety committees with authority to halt production when concerns arise, expanded whistleblower protections, and transparent reporting of all safety incidents. We are also establishing an employee hardship fund to assist workers affected by health issues related to workplace conditions. Claire took a breath, steadying herself for the hardest part. I understand these actions will have significant financial consequences for the company. Our stock price will likely fall. We may face additional civil litigation now that families are no longer bound by NDAs. We will certainly face criminal prosecution of individuals who were responsible for the decisions that led to Riverside. Some of you are probably calculating right now how this might lead to bankruptcy, acquisition, or corporate dissolution. She smiled grimly. You might be right. This company might not survive the truth, but I've come to believe that any organization that can only exist by hiding its crimes doesn't deserve to exist. My father built Donovan Industries over 40 years. He taught me about business, about leadership, about legacy. But he also taught me, inadvertently, that no amount of success justifies sacrificing human lives, that no profit margin is worth more than someone's mother, father, son, or daughter. Her voice strengthened, conviction burning through exhaustion. I'm not here to defend my father's choices or to preserve his legacy at any cost. I'm here to tell the truth and accept the consequences. And I'm here to promise that if Donovan Industries survives this, it will be a different company, a better company, one that actually deserves the trust of its employees and the communities it serves. The questions came like a flood then, reporters shouting over each other. Claire pointed to the Times reporter first. Ms. Donovan, have you been advised that you could face personal criminal liability for disclosure of these events? My attorneys have made me aware of all legal risks. I'm proceeding anyway. Another reporter from a financial network. What about your shareholders? Don't you have a fiduciary duty to protect their investments? I believe my fiduciary duty includes ensuring this company operates legally and ethically. Shareholders invested in Donovan Industries, not in a criminal enterprise. If they lose money because we're being held accountable for crimes, that's unfortunate but necessary. A woman from a local news station. You mentioned Ethan Cole is recovering. Have you spoken with him about your plans? Claire felt emotion threatening again. I have. Mr. Cole has shown me extraordinary grace. He's lost everything because of decisions my company made, yet he saved my life and encouraged me to pursue this path. He told me his wife, Anna, believed in second chances, and in people choosing to be better. I'm trying to honor her memory by being worthy of that belief. What about the other Riverside families? Have you contacted them? We're reaching out through the independent administrator of the restitution fund. Many families signed NDAs under significant pressure and distress. We're making it clear that we won't enforce those agreements and that they're free to speak publicly about their experiences. A business reporter near the back, Ms. Donovan, isn't this just an elaborate PR stunt? A way to get ahead of inevitable prosecution by playing the moral hero? Claire had expected this question, had prepared for it, but it still stung. If I wanted good PR, I'd do what my father did. Settle quietly, move on, protect the brand. What I'm doing is the opposite of good PR. I'm voluntarily exposing crimes that could destroy everything I've inherited. If that's a PR stunt, it's the worst one in history, the reporter persisted. But you personally benefit from being seen as the reformer, the CEO with a conscience. I personally benefit nothing. Claire's voice was sharp now. I'm destroying my father's reputation, potentially bankrupting my company, and making myself a target for lawsuits and criminal investigations. The only benefit is being able to look at myself in the mirror. If you think that's worth what this will cost me, you've never actually had to sacrifice anything for your principles. The room fell silent at her vehemence. Even the hostile reporter sat back, momentarily satisfied. Patricia stood up from the front row. I'm Patricia Wong, independent board member of Donovan Industries. I want to add that the board has voted to support Ms. Donovan's initiatives. We recognize this is unprecedented and risky, but we believe it's the right course of action. This company has lost its way. Claire is trying to find it again. Several other board members stood in solidarity. Not all of them, Claire noticed. 4 remained seated, their faces carefully neutral. They'd survive whatever came next by hedging their bets, neither supporting nor opposing, just calculating their personal risk. The questions continued for another 30 minutes. Claire answered them all honestly, refusing to hide behind corporate speak or legal equivocation. Yes, she expected criminal charges. Yes, that the company might fail. Yes, she understood this would affect thousands of employees. No, she didn't have all the answers about how to manage the fallout. When she finally ended the conference, her legs were shaking and her throat was raw. But she'd done it. She told the truth to the world, and whatever came next, at least it would be built on honesty rather than lies. She exited through a back hallway, avoiding the reporters who wanted follow-up quotes. Jennifer was waiting with her phone, which apparently hadn't stopped ringing. Shareholder calls, media requests, employee concerns, 3 separate law firms offering to represent victims in class action suits against us. Jennifer rattled off the chaos. And Ms. Donovan? The stock just opened. We're down 42%. Claire nodded, unsurprised. What else? County Memorial called. Mr. Cole saw the press conference. He wants to talk to you. That cut through the noise. I'll go now. Cancel everything else for today. Everything? You have? Everything, Jennifer. The world is already on fire. Another few hours won't matter. The drive to the hospital was surreal. Claire's phone kept buzzing with notifications, news alerts about her own press conference, hot takes from business analysts, opinion pieces being written in real time. The consensus seemed split between courageous leadership and corporate suicide. Both were probably true. When she reached Ethan's room, she found him sitting up, actually looking human instead of like a trauma victim. His color was better, his eyes clearer. He He smiled when she entered, and the warmth of it nearly undid her. "I watched," he said simply. "Thank you." "I didn't do anything that merits thanks. I just told the truth I should have pursued years ago." "You stood in front of the world and admitted your company committed crimes. You sacrificed your father's legacy for justice. That takes courage most people don't have." Ethan gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Sit. You look exhausted." Claire sat, feeling the adrenaline finally draining away, leaving her hollow. "Your daughter asked me if I was really going to help or just being nice. I hope I answered her question." "You did. She's been watching the news with me. She says you're brave like her mom was." Ethan's voice was thick with emotion. "Coming from Lily, that's the highest praise she knows how to give. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified and uncertain, and like I might have just destroyed everything for nothing." Anna used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite being afraid. Ethan reached out his good hand and Claire took it without thinking. "You did that today. You chose truth over comfort. That matters." They sat in silence for a moment, hands joined, drawing strength from each other. "The district attorney called me," Ethan said quietly. "They want to interview me officially, about Anna, about what I documented working in your building, about Michael Torres. Are you ready for that?" "I've been ready for 5 years. I've been waiting for someone to care enough to ask the right questions." He squeezed her hand. "You made that possible. You gave Anna's death meaning beyond just tragedy. You turned it into a catalyst for change. I don't know if I can actually change anything. The company might collapse. The reforms might not survive if someone else takes over. I might have destroyed everything and accomplished nothing. Or," Ethan said gently, "you might have started something that grows beyond this one company. You might have shown other CEOs that accountability is possible, that conscience isn't weakness, that sometimes you have to burn down the old structure to build something worth keeping." Claire looked at their joined hands. His was calloused from years of janitorial work marked by labor that should have been beneath his skills. Hers was soft, manicured, marked by privilege she'd never questioned until 2 days ago. "I want to offer you something," she said quietly, "and I need you to understand it's not charity or guilt. It's restitution and respect." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "When you're recovered, I want to offer you a position at Donovan Industries. Not as a janitor, as Director of Worker Safety and Compliance. You'd have authority to implement safety protocols, investigate concerns, halt production when necessary. You'd report directly to me and to the board. You'd be paid appropriately for your expertise and experience." Ethan stared at her, shocked. "Claire, you have a mechanical engineering degree. You have first-hand experience with what happens when safety is ignored. You've spent 3 years studying this company from the inside out. You're exactly who should be leading safety reform." Claire's voice was firm. "And more than that, you deserve to have your skills recognized, to be seen for who you are, not just what job you were forced to take." "What if I say no? What if I don't want anything to do with your company ever again?" "Then I'll respect that. I'll make sure you and Lily are taken care of through the restitution fund. I'll support whatever path you choose." Claire met his eyes. "But I'm hoping you'll say yes, because I think Anna would want you to. I think she'd want her death to result in changes that protect other families, and I don't think anyone else could honor her memory the way you could." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "You're asking me to work for the company that killed my wife. I'm asking you to transform the company that killed your wife into one that would never let it happen again." Claire's voice was gentle but intense. "I'm asking you to build the legacy Anna deserved, one where workers' lives matter more than quarterly profits, where safety isn't negotiable, where people like you are never forced to be invisible." He was quiet for a long time, tears sliding down his face. Finally he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "Let me think about it. Let me talk to Lily. This isn't just my decision anymore." "Of course. Take whatever time you need." The door opened and Dr. Chen entered, followed by a nurse pushing a wheelchair. "Mr. Cole, someone very insistent wants to visit you." And there was Lily, thin and pale but smiling, clutching her rabbit and practically vibrating with excitement. "Dad! Lilybug!" Ethan's face transformed with joy. The nurse helped Lily into the wheelchair and brought her to her father's bedside. Ethan wrapped his good arm around her, pulling her close, both of them crying and laughing. "You scared me so much," Lily sobbed into his shoulder. "I thought you were going to leave me like Mom did." "Never. I'm never leaving you. I'm right here." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "I'm so proud of you, being so brave." "Miss Donovan was brave too," Lily said, pulling back to look at Claire. "I saw you on TV. You told everyone the truth, even though it was scary." Claire knelt beside the wheelchair. "Mr. Rabbit helped. He gave me courage." Lily giggled through her tears. "He's good at that." Dr. Chen cleared her throat gently. "I'll give you some privacy, but Mr. Cole, don't tire yourself out. You're recovering remarkably well, but you still need rest." When she left, the three of them sat together in the small hospital room. Ethan told Lily about the job offer, explaining in simple terms what it would mean. Lily listened seriously, her young face thoughtful. "Would you be helping to keep other people's moms and dads safe?" she asked. "Yes, that would be my main job, making sure workers don't get hurt." "Then you should do it." Lily's voice was firm. "Mom would want that. She always said you should help people when you can." Ethan looked at Claire over his daughter's head. "It seems I have my answer. If the offer still stands, I accept." "It stands." Claire felt hope kindling in her chest for the first time since the press conference. "Thank you, Ethan, truly." They talked for another hour, making plans, discussing logistics, imagining what the new safety program might look like. Lily fell asleep in her wheelchair, exhausted by emotion and illness, her rabbit clutched close. She looked so small, so fragile, so impossibly brave. When Claire finally left them, promising to return the next day, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel again: purpose beyond survival. She wasn't just tearing down her father's corrupt empire. She was building something new with the people who'd suffered most from its failures. The next days were chaos. The stock continued to fall, bottoming out at 58% loss before stabilizing slightly. 3 shareholder lawsuits were filed, claiming breach of fiduciary duty. 2 major clients canceled contracts, citing reputational concerns. The press coverage was relentless, dissecting every aspect of the Riverside disaster and Claire's response. But there were unexpected bright spots. Employees started sharing stories of safety concerns they'd been afraid to report. Other companies quietly began reviewing their own safety protocols, afraid of being the next scandal. Advocacy groups praised Claire's transparency, and several major investors, led by a progressive pension fund, actually bought stock, betting on ethical leadership being worth the short-term pain. The district attorney's investigation moved forward with remarkable speed. Search warrants were executed. Witnesses were interviewed. Evidence was cataloged. Within 2 weeks, the first indictments came down. Victor Hale was charged with criminally negligent homicide, 43 counts. Harold Benton faced charges of obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit fraud. 3 other former executives who'd participated in the cover-up were also indicted. The news broke on a Tuesday afternoon. Claire was in a meeting with insurance lawyers discussing liability exposure when Jennifer burst in with her phone. "They arrested them. Victor and Harold. It's all over the news. They're being arraigned right now." Claire excused herself and found a television in the break room. Several employees were already there, watching footage of Victor Hale being led into the courthouse in handcuffs. He looked old suddenly, diminished, the arrogant confidence gone. One of the employees, a young woman from accounting, spoke without looking away from the screen. "My aunt worked at Riverside. She was one of the ones who survived, but she's never been the same. Lung damage, can't work anymore. She got $40,000 in the settlement and had to promise never to talk about it." The woman finally turned to Claire. "Thank you for making this happen." "I'm sorry it took so long," Claire said quietly. "Better late than never." The trial became a media sensation. Prosecutors presented the damning internal documents, showed cost-benefit analyses that literally calculated the value of human lives in dollars and cents. They called survivors to testify about the conditions they'd worked in, the complaints they'd filed, the reassurances they'd received that everything was safe. And they called Ethan Cole. He took the stand on a warm afternoon in late spring, nearly 2 months after the bullet that had changed everything. His shoulder had healed well, though he still had limited range of motion. He wore a suit Claire had helped him pick out, looking professional and dignified and nothing like the invisible janitor he'd been forced to become. The prosecutor, Monica Reeves herself handling this critical witness, walked him through his story. His marriage to Anna, her employment at Riverside, the complaints she'd brought home about chemical smells and inadequate ventilation, the company's assurances that everything was fine. Mr. Cole, can you tell the jury what happened on September 3rd, 2020? Ethan's voice was steady, though Claire, watching from the gallery, could see the pain in his eyes. I got a call at 2:17 p.m. from County Memorial. They told me there'd been an explosion at the Riverside plant and that my wife had been brought in. I drove there. It took 19 minutes, but it felt like hours. What did you find when you arrived? Chaos. The ER was overwhelmed. There were people on gurneys in the hallways. I heard screaming, saw burns that... He paused, composing himself. They brought me to Anna. She was conscious but struggling to breathe. Her lungs were damaged from chemical inhalation. The doctor told me they were doing everything they could, but the damage was severe. Did you get to speak with her? Yes. She was in and out of consciousness, but when she was aware, we talked. She told me she loved me, made me promise to take care of Lily, made me promise not to let what happened to her make me bitter. Ethan's voice cracked. She died 4 hours later. She suffocated, essentially, drowned in her own lungs, and she was awake for most of it. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even the defense attorneys looked uncomfortable. Mr. Cole, what did you do after your wife's death? I tried to get answers. I contacted the company, asked for investigation results, wanted to know why the explosion happened. I was told it was under investigation and that I'd be contacted. Weeks went by. Then I was approached by a company lawyer who offered me a settlement, $200,000 in exchange for signing an NDA and releasing all claims against Donovan Industries. Did you accept? No. The lawyer told me Anna had made mistakes that contributed to the explosion, that she'd been in an unauthorized area. I knew that was a lie. Anna was meticulous about safety. She followed every protocol. Ethan's voice hardened. So I refused the settlement. I told them I wanted the truth, not their money. What happened then? Nothing. They stopped contacting me. The investigation went nowhere. OSHA issued a report that basically blamed worker error. Life went on for everyone except the families who'd lost people. He paused. So I decided to find the truth myself. I applied for a job at Donovan Industries, took a position as a janitor because it gave me access to the building without anyone paying attention to me, and I spent 3 years gathering evidence. Reeves approached with a box of documents. Mr. Cole, do you recognize these? Yes. Those are copies I made of internal memos, safety reports, and correspondence related to Riverside. I found them in the archives over the course of 2.5 years. I photographed them, documented their location, and built a timeline of what really happened. Why didn't you bring this to authorities sooner? Because I didn't have everything. I knew if I went public before I had irrefutable proof, it would be my word against a corporation. They'd bury me. Ethan looked directly at the jury. And because part of me was still deciding what to do with the information. Some days I wanted justice. Other days I just wanted revenge. What changed? Claire Donovan became CEO. I watched her for several months. She was different from her father. Tougher in some ways, but also more human. She actually saw the employees as people. And when the shooting happened, when I had to make a split-second decision about whether to save her or let her die, I chose to save her because I believed she could be better than what came before. I believed she deserved the chance to make things right. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal. He tried to paint Ethan as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, suggested his documentation was selective and biased, implied his act of saving Claire was calculated to give him leverage. But Ethan remained calm, answering each question honestly, and his quiet dignity made the attacks look desperate. When he stepped down from the stand, Claire caught his eye. He gave her a small nod, and she nodded back, a silent acknowledgement of battles fought and survived. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When the verdict came back, Victor Hale was convicted on all 43 counts of criminally negligent homicide. Harold Benton was convicted of obstruction and conspiracy. The other executives received mixed verdicts, but all faced prison time. Victor was sentenced to 25 years. Harold got 15. Together, they'd be old men if they ever saw freedom again. Claire attended the sentencing hearing, sitting in the gallery surrounded by Riverside families. When the judge read the sentences, some people wept. Others sat in stunned silence. One woman, Maria Torres's mother, whispered, "Finally, finally someone paid." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Claire gave a brief statement, flanked by Patricia Wong and Harvey Steinberg. Justice has been served for the Riverside victims. These convictions don't bring back the 43 people who died, but they affirm that no one is above the law. The corporations and their leaders can be held accountable when they prioritize profit over human lives. Claire's voice was firm. Donovan Industries will continue implementing reforms to ensure this never happens again. We will honor the memory of those we lost by being better than we were. A reporter shouted, "Ms. Donovan, your company's stock is still down significantly. Some analysts say you'll never fully recover. Do you regret your decision to expose these crimes?" Claire smiled, and it was genuine. "Not for a second. We lost stock value. We gained our integrity. That's a trade I'll make every time." That night, Claire had dinner with Ethan and Lily at a small restaurant near the hospital. Lily was out of the hospital now, living with Ethan in a new apartment the company had helped them find, far from the factory district's toxic air. Her breathing had improved dramatically. She'd gained weight. She laughed freely, no longer carrying quite so much worry on her small shoulders. "Dad starts his new job next week," Lily announced proudly, twirling pasta on her fork. "He gets an office and everything." "A real office," Ethan confirmed, grinning, "with a door and windows and a nameplate. I barely know what to do with myself." "You'll figure it out," Claire said warmly. "You've already been revolutionizing our safety protocols, and you haven't even officially started." It was true. Ethan had spent his recovery time designing comprehensive safety systems, interviewing workers across all Donovan facilities, building relationships with unions and advocacy groups. His first official act as director of worker safety had been to shut down production at a chemical plant in Ohio when workers reported concerning fumes. The shutdown cost the company money, but found serious problems that could have resulted in another disaster. The old board would have fought him. The new board supported him unanimously. "I still can't believe this is real sometimes," Ethan admitted. 6 months ago, I was a janitor nobody saw. Now I'm dining with the CEO, and my daughter has doctors who actually care if she gets better." "You were always worth seeing," Claire said quietly. "I just wasn't looking. None of us were. That's changing." Lily tugged on Claire's sleeve. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, honey." "Are you and my dad friends now? Like, real friends?" Claire and Ethan exchanged glances, both smiling. "Yes," Claire said. "We're real friends." "Good." Lily nodded, satisfied. "Mom always said the best friends are the ones who make you braver. Dad says you make him brave enough to try again, and he makes you brave enough to tell the truth, so you're best friends." Out of the mouths of babes, Claire thought, feeling her eyes sting with tears. This child had lost so much, had survived so much, and still understood human connection better than most adults. "Your mom was very wise," Claire told her. "And so are you." They finished dinner talking about ordinary things, like Lily's upcoming return to school, Ethan's physical therapy appointments, Claire's ongoing battles with shareholders who still wanted her removed. It felt normal, comfortable, like family dinners should feel. When they parted ways, Ethan lingered while Lily climbed into the car. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything, for telling the truth, for giving me a chance to honor Anna's memory, for seeing us. Thank you for saving my life, and not just from the bullet, from becoming someone I couldn't live with." They hugged, careful of his healing shoulder, two people who'd found redemption in each other's courage. As Claire drove home through the city lights, she thought about her father, about the empire he'd built and the methods he'd used, about legacy and what it really meant. Richard Donovan had wanted to be remembered as a titan of industry, a man who built something lasting. Instead, he'd be remembered as a cautionary tale, a man who'd lost his moral compass in pursuit of profit. But Claire was building something different now, Something built on transparency and accountability and the revolutionary idea that companies should value people over profits. It was harder. It cost more. It would never make her as rich as her father's methods would have. But when she looked in the mirror, she saw someone she could respect. Someone Ethan Cole thought was worth saving. Someone Lily Cole called brave. And that, Claire Donovan decided, was the only legacy worth having. The kind built on truth, forged in fire, and strong enough to carry the weight of 43 souls finally able to rest. The seasons changed, and with them, so did Donovan Industries. Spring became summer, summer faded into autumn, and by the time winter touched the city with frost, the company looked nothing like the empire Richard Donovan had built. It looked better. It looked honest. Claire stood in the lobby of the newly renovated headquarters on a December morning, watching employees stream in for the day. She'd made it a habit to spend time here in the mornings, visible and present, learning names and faces, remembering that corporations were just collections of people trying to make their way in the world. The marble floors still gleamed, but now there were photographs on the walls, pictures of actual employees at work, their faces and stories honored rather than hidden. One wall had become a memorial. 43 names etched in bronze, each one representing a life lost at Riverside. Beneath the names, a simple inscription that Ethan had written, "They came to work trusting we would keep them safe. We failed them. We will never forget." Employees touched the memorial as they passed, a ritual of remembrance that had developed organically. It was beautiful and heartbreaking in equal measure. "Ms. Donovan?" Jennifer approached with her tablet and the careful expression that meant challenging news was coming. "The quarterly earnings report is ready. Harvey wants to go over it with you before the board meeting this afternoon." "How bad?" "We're profitable again. Barely. But it's the first quarter in the black since the press conference." Jennifer allowed herself a small smile. "The restructuring is working. Slowly, but it's working." Claire felt relief wash through her. The months after the convictions had been brutal. More clients had left. 2 attempted hostile takeovers had been barely fought off. There were days when bankruptcy felt inevitable, when Claire wondered if choosing truth had been the same as choosing destruction. But they'd survived. Leaner, humbler, but surviving. "Tell Harvey I'll be there in 20 minutes. I want to stop by worker safety first." She took the elevator to the 5th floor, where Ethan's department now occupied what used to be executive overflow offices. The transformation was remarkable. Where there had once been mahogany and leather, there were now workstations where safety engineers reviewed protocols and analyzed incident reports. A large board displayed real-time safety metrics from every Donovan facility, complete transparency replacing the old culture of hiding problems. Ethan was in his office, door open as always, studying blueprints with 2 engineers. He looked up when Claire knocked, his face breaking into a warm smile that still made her heart catch slightly. Over the months, their friendship had deepened into something neither of them had quite named, built on shared trauma and mutual respect, and the kind of understanding that only comes from rebuilding something broken together. "Morning," he greeted her. "We're looking at the ventilation redesign for the Ohio plant. Final approval should come through next week." "The one that would have cost $3 million under my father's leadership? The one that would have saved 43 lives under anyone with basic human decency," Ethan corrected gently. "Yes, that one." The engineers gathered their papers and left, giving Claire and Ethan privacy. She settled into the chair across from his desk, a ritual they'd developed over countless meetings and late-night strategy sessions. "Quarterly numbers are in. We're profitable." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "Seriously?" "Claire, that's amazing. I know the analysts were predicting at least another quarter in the red." We're not exactly swimming in money, but we're stable, growing even. Turns out some clients actually value working with an ethical company." Claire's smile was tired but genuine. "Who knew?" "People who weren't raised by Richard Donovan," Ethan said dryly, then softened his tone. "Sorry, I know that's still complicated for you." "It is. It always will be." Claire looked at the photo on Ethan's desk, the one of Anna and Lily from Better Days. "How do you do it? How do you forgive what can't be forgiven?" "I don't forgive it. I accept it. There's a difference." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Your father made terrible choices. Those choices killed my wife, but you're not your father, and you're spending every day proving that corporations can choose differently. That has to count for something. Does it count enough? For you, I mean. Does working here, walking these halls where the decisions were made that killed Anna, does it ever feel like betrayal? Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering. Sometimes. Late at night, when I'm here alone reviewing safety reports, I think about how Anna would have loved this job, how she would have been brilliant at it, and I wonder if I'm trying to do her work because I can't accept that she's gone. He met Claire's eyes. But then I think about the lives we're saving, the disasters we're preventing, and I know Anna would want this. She'd want her death to mean something beyond tragedy. It does mean something. You've transformed this company's entire safety culture in less than a year. Every facility reports that workers feel empowered to raise concerns now. Incident reports are up 300% because people aren't afraid anymore. That's Anna's legacy as much as yours. It's our legacy, Ethan corrected. Yours, mine, Anna's, even your father's in a twisted way. We're all part of this story. Claire's phone buzzed, a text from Lily, who is now a regular correspondent. Dad's birthday surprise is ready. Don't forget cake. Lily. She showed Ethan the text, grinning. Your daughter is very bossy about party planning. She gets it from her mother. Anna could organize anything. Ethan shook his head fondly. I still can't believe you all planned a surprise party. I'm the worst at surprises. Which is why we didn't tell you. Be at Luigi's at 6. Act shocked. Lily has been practicing her surprise yell for 3 days. The birthday party that evening was exactly what Ethan needed without knowing he needed it. Luigi's, a family-owned Italian restaurant that had been struggling until Donovan Industries moved its corporate events there, was transformed with decorations that Lily had clearly supervised. Balloons in every color, a banner that said "Best Dad Ever" in Lily's careful handwriting, and a cake shaped like a hard hat because Lily thought it was funny. The guest list was small but meaningful. Claire and Patricia Wong from the board, Harvey Steinberg and his wife, Dr. Chen from the hospital, Marcus, the security guard who'd been the first person to see Ethan every morning for 3 years, Frank from janitorial services, who'd given Ethan his first job in the building, a handful of engineers from the safety department, and in the place of honor, closest to Ethan, was an empty chair with Anna's photo on it. Lily had insisted. Mom should be here too, even if she can't really be here, she'd explained with the wisdom of a child who'd learned to carry grief without being crushed by it. When Ethan arrived, Lily's surprise was so loud and joyful that half the restaurant turned to look. Ethan's face went through confusion to shock to pure delight in seconds. He scooped Lily up in a hug that made her giggle and squeal. Did you know about this? He demanded of Claire. I might have helped a little. A little? This is elaborate. Your daughter is very persuasive, also slightly terrifying when she's determined. They ate and laughed and told stories. Marcus shared tales of Ethan arriving every morning at exactly 5:47, so punctual you could set your watch by him. Dr. Chen talked about how Ethan had visited every Riverside survivor still receiving treatment at County Memorial, offering support and connection. Frank admitted he'd known Ethan was overqualified for janitorial work, but had given him the job anyway because he'd seen something in his eyes that said this man needed to be in that building for reasons that weren't Frank's business. You knew? Ethan looked stunned. Son, I've been hiring janitors for 30 years. I can spot an engineer pretending to push a mop. But I figured you had your reasons, and as long as you did good work, those reasons were yours. Frank raised his glass. For what it's worth, I'm glad you were there. Glad you saved Ms. Donovan. Glad you're changing this company from the inside. They toasted to that, and to Anna's memory, and to second chances, and to the power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. When it was time for cake, Lily insisted on making a speech. She stood on her chair, her thin frame stronger now than it had been a year ago, her breathing clear, her eyes bright. My dad is the best person I know, she announced to the restaurant. He works really hard to keep people safe. He makes sure nobody else loses their mom like I did. And he's teaching me that being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared. She looked at her father with pure adoration. Happy birthday, Dad. I love you to the moon and back. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Ethan pulled Lily into a hug, his shoulders shaking with emotion. Claire turned away to compose herself and found Patricia dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. "That child," Patricia whispered, "has more wisdom than our entire board combined." She learned it from her parents, both of them. After cake, after presents, after Lily started yawning despite her protests that she wasn't tired, people began to leave. Claire helped Ethan gather Lily's various art projects and party favors, the comfortable domesticity of the task feeling natural rather than strange. "Thank you for this," Ethan said as they loaded things into his car. Lily was already buckled in, fighting sleep with the determination of a child who doesn't want to miss anything. "You didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to. You deserve to be celebrated. Both of you do." Claire hesitated, then added, "You've given me so much this year. A purpose beyond profit, a reason to believe that change is possible. The very least I can do is throw you a birthday party." "Is that really the least you can do? Because I'm pretty sure the least would have been a card." Ethan's tone was teasing, but his eyes were serious. "Claire, you've given me more than you realize. You gave me the chance to honor Anna, to turn my anger into something constructive, to be more than just a widower stuck in grief. You were never just that. I felt like it. For years, that's all I was, Anna's widower, Lily's struggling father, the man broken by tragedy." Ethan looked at his sleeping daughter through the car window. "But you saw me as more than that. You saw me as someone who could lead, could change things, could matter. That's a gift I don't know how to repay. You already repaid it. You took a bullet for me, remember? That was instinct. What you've done is choice. Every single day you choose to be better than the easy path. You choose truth over comfort, reform over tradition, people over profit. That takes sustained courage that makes my split-second decision look simple." They stood in the restaurant parking lot, streetlights casting long shadows, the winter air cold but not uncomfortable. Something hung between them, unspoken but increasingly difficult to ignore. Claire broke the silence. "Ethan, I need to tell you something, and I need you to know there's absolutely no pressure, no expectation. You can ignore what I'm about to say and nothing changes between us." "That's a terrifying preamble." "I know." She took a breath. "Somewhere over the last year, you stopped being just the man who saved my life. You became the person I most want to talk to, the first person I think of when something good happens, the one whose opinion matters most. And I think I'm falling in love with you." Ethan went very still. "Claire, I know it's complicated. I know my company killed your wife. I know there are power dynamics and grief and 1,000 reasons why this is probably a terrible idea." The words tumbled out faster now. "But I also know that life is short and unpredictable, and we of all people should understand that. We've both lost so much and nearly lost more. And I don't want to lose the chance to tell you that you've become the most important person in my world." Ethan's eyes were wet with tears. "I need to tell you something too. About a month ago, Lily asked me if I thought her mom would be okay with me having feelings for you. She said she could tell I was happier when you were around, and she wanted to make sure it was okay to be happy again." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that her mother believed in second chances, that love isn't finite, that feeling something for someone new doesn't diminish what I felt for Anna. And I told her that yes, I thought Anna would approve of you." Ethan stepped closer. "Because Anna always said life was too short to waste on bitterness, that even when terrible things happen, you have to stay open to joy." "And are you? Open to joy? With you? Yes." Ethan reached out, gently taking Claire's hand. "I'm terrified. I feel guilty. I worry about what people will think, whether it's too soon, whether Anna would really be okay with this. But underneath all that, I'm falling in love with you too. Have been for months, if I'm honest." Claire felt something break open in her chest, hope and fear and love all tangled together. "We're a mess, aren't we?" "Completely, but maybe that's okay. Maybe messy and complicated is honest. Maybe two broken people can help each other heal." "I'd like to try, if you would." "I would." Ethan smiled, that warm, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "Though we're probably going to give your PR team a heart attack." "Let them panic. I've survived worse." Claire squeezed his hand. We'll take it slow. No rush. Just see where this goes. That sounds perfect. They stood there a moment longer, holding hands in the parking lot. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something new from the ruins. The winter months passed in a blur of work and tentative romance and continued transformation. Claire and Ethan kept their relationship quiet at first, mindful of optics and gossip, but it was impossible to hide the way they looked at each other in meetings, the way they gravitated together at company events, the way Lily talked about Dad and Claire in the same breath like they were a unit. By February, when a business magazine ran a profile piece titled "The CEO Who Chose Justice Over Profit," the article mentioned almost casually that Claire Donovan was in a relationship with Ethan Cole, the director of worker safety who'd saved her life. The response was surprisingly positive. People saw it as redemption, as proof that acknowledging wrongs and making amends could lead to healing. There were critics, of course. Some called it opportunistic, suggested Ethan had calculated his heroism. Others said Claire was trying to buy absolution through romance. But mostly, people saw what it was. Two people who'd survived tragedy, finding unexpected connection. The spring shareholder meeting was Claire's biggest test yet. A full year since the press conference, 18 months since the shooting, the shareholders would vote on whether to keep her as CEO or replace her with leadership more focused on traditional profit metrics. The meeting room was packed. Shareholders, proxy voters, media representatives, employees who'd purchased stock through the company plan. The energy was tense, uncertain, like everyone was holding their breath. Claire stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces. In the front row, Ethan sat with Lily beside him. The girl had insisted on coming, wearing her best dress and clutching Mr. Rabbit for moral support. "Good morning, I'm Claire Donovan, and for the past 18 months, I've served as CEO of this company through what might be the most turbulent period in its history. Today, you'll vote on whether I continue in that role." She clicked to the first slide of her presentation. Not glossy graphics or impressive charts, just a photograph of the Riverside Memorial Wall. "When I became CEO, I inherited a company built on a foundation of lies. My father and his leadership team chose profit over human lives, then covered up their crimes. 43 people died because we wouldn't spend money on safety equipment. Families were destroyed because we prioritized quarterly earnings over basic human decency." The room was silent, attentive. She'd said these words before, but they still carried weight. 18 months ago, I made a choice. I could continue the cover-up, protect the company's reputation, and maintain profitability through the same methods my father used. Or I could tell the truth and accept the consequences. Claire advanced the slide to show their stock price chart, the dramatic drop after her press conference clearly visible. As you can see, truth is expensive. We lost nearly 60% of our market value. We lost major clients. We faced lawsuits, criminal investigations, and a near-constant barrage of negative press. She clicked again. Now the chart showed the slow, steady recovery over the past 6 months. But something interesting happened. As we implemented real safety reforms, as we empowered workers to report problems without fear, as we built a culture of transparency and accountability, people started to trust us again. Clients came back. New clients sought us out specifically because they wanted to work with a company that had proven it valued ethics over easy money. Another slide. Employee retention numbers. Our employee turnover dropped 43%. Productivity is up. Workplace accidents are down 78%. Turns out people work better when they believe their employer won't sacrifice them for profit margins. Patricia stood up from the board section. "I'd like to add something, if I may." Claire nodded, stepping aside. "I've served on corporate boards for 30 years. I've seen a lot of leadership styles, a lot of crisis management, a lot of attempts to balance profit with principles." Patricia's voice carried authority. What Claire did was unprecedented. She voluntarily exposed crimes that could have stayed buried. She sacrificed short-term gains for long-term integrity. And she's proven that ethical leadership and profitability aren't mutually exclusive. Harvey Steinberg stood as well. From a legal perspective, Claire's transparency has actually reduced our liability exposure. By cooperating with investigations, by making restitution voluntarily, by demonstrating genuine commitment to reform, We've avoided many of the punitive measures that would have come if authorities had discovered these crimes through other means. Her choice, while painful, was ultimately the smart business decision. One of the major shareholders, an elderly man named Robert Chen, who controlled 7% of the voting shares, raised his hand. Ms. Donovan, I've been invested in this company since your father took it public. I respected Richard enormously, but I've watched what you've done this past year, and I need to ask, do you think your father would have approved? Claire felt the weight of the question, the ghost of Richard Donovan still haunting every decision. No, she said honestly. My father would have been horrified by what I did. He would have seen it as betrayal, as weakness, as destroying everything he built. She paused. But my father also chose to let 43 people die rather than spend money on safety equipment. So I've made peace with disappointing him. Robert Chen nodded slowly. That took courage to say. I appreciate your honesty. He stood, his aged frame still commanding respect. I'm voting to retain you as CEO, not because the numbers are good, though they're improving, but because leadership with integrity is rare enough that when we find it, we should fight to keep it. The vote was called. The ballots were counted. When the results were announced, Claire had been retained by 67% of shareholders. Not unanimous, but a clear mandate. She felt Ethan's eyes on her from the front row, saw him mouth, "I'm proud of you," saw Lily bouncing excitedly in her seat. The meeting adjourned and people swarmed Claire with congratulations and questions. But she pushed through the crowd, making her way to Ethan and Lily. "We did it," she said, pulling them both into a hug. "You did it," Ethan corrected. "We just believed in you." Same thing. Claire knelt to Lily's level. "Thank you for being here, sweetie. Your support means everything." "My dad says you're changing the world," Lily said seriously. "Are you?" "I'm trying to change one company. If that affects the world, even a little, that's enough." That summer, on the anniversary of the Riverside explosion, Donovan Industries held a memorial service at the site of the former factory. The building had been demolished, the land decontaminated, and in its place now stood a park. Green grass, trees, playground equipment, and at the center a permanent memorial listing every name of every person who died. Families gathered, some for the first time since the settlements had scattered them into silence. They came because the NDAs were void, because Claire had personally invited them, because finally, after 5 years, their grief was being acknowledged publicly. Claire stood at the memorial with Ethan beside her, Lily holding both their hands. She'd been asked to speak, to represent the company, but the words felt inadequate. 5 years ago, 43 people came to work at this factory. They trusted Donovan Industries to keep them safe. We betrayed that trust through negligence, through prioritizing profit over safety, through choosing the easy path over the right one. Claire's voice carried across the gathering. Nothing I say today can bring them back. No apology can undo the loss. But I can promise that their deaths have resulted in change. Real, permanent change. Every Donovan facility now operates under the most stringent safety protocols in the industry. Every worker has the authority to stop production if they see a problem. Every family affected by Riverside has received restitution without strings attached. She gestured to Ethan. This is Ethan Cole. His wife Anna died here. For 3 years, he worked in our building documenting the evidence of what really happened, building a case for justice. And when violence came to our headquarters, he saved my life despite having every reason not to. He chose mercy over revenge, and in doing so, he gave us all the chance to be better. Ethan stepped forward, his hand still holding Lily's. My wife believed in second chances. She believed people could change, could grow, could choose differently. What's happened at Donovan Industries over the past 2 years is a testament to that belief. It doesn't erase what happened here, but it honors the memory of everyone we lost by making sure it never happens again. One by one, family members came forward to place flowers at the memorial. They shared stories of their loved ones, spoke names that hadn't been said publicly in years, allowed their grief to finally be witnessed. When it was Lily's turn, she placed a bouquet of lavender at the base of her mother's name. "Hi, Mom," she whispered. "I'm 9 now. I'm healthy. Dad has a good job, and I think you'd be proud of him. He turned what happened to you into something that helps people, just like you would have wanted." Claire watched this child, who'd grown so much in the past year, who'd learned to carry loss without being destroyed by it. Lily turned and hugged her, a spontaneous gesture of affection and trust. "Thank you for giving my dad his purpose back," Lily whispered, "and for loving us." "Thank you for teaching me what courage really looks like," Claire whispered back. The memorial service ended as the sun set, golden light washing over the park that had risen from tragedy. People lingered, talking quietly, sharing memories, building connections that had been broken by NDAs and silence. Claire found herself standing with Maria Torres's mother, Elena, a woman in her 70s who'd lost her daughter in the same explosion that took Anna. "I hated you," Elena said bluntly. "After Maria died, after they offered me money to stay quiet, after I saw how the investigation just stopped, I hated everyone connected to this company. I hated your father. I hated you for inheriting his empire. I especially hated that janitor because he wouldn't take the settlement either, and I thought he was just being stubborn." Claire nodded, accepting the honesty. "You had every right to hate us. But then you told the truth. You destroyed your own company to get justice for my daughter. And that janitor, he turned out to be the bravest man I've ever heard of." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Maria would have liked both of you. She always said the world needed more people willing to do hard things for the right reasons. I wish I could have known her. She was like your Anna," Elena said to Ethan, who joined them. "Stubborn, principled, believed she could make things better through hard work and integrity. They would have been friends, I think, our girls." "I think so too," Ethan agreed quietly. Elena took both their hands. "I forgive you, not because you've earned it, though God knows you've tried, but because Maria would want me to. She'd say holding on to hate would just mean they killed my spirit too, so I'm letting go. And I'm thanking you for making sure no other mother loses her daughter the way I lost mine." They stood together as the last light faded, three people bound by tragedy and transformation, by loss and the slow, painful work of healing. The years that followed were not easy, but they were honest. Donovan Industries continued its transformation, becoming known in the industry not for its profit margins, but for its ethical standards. Other companies began adopting similar safety protocols, some voluntarily, others under pressure from workers who'd heard about what was possible when leadership actually cared. Ethan's safety division grew, eventually becoming a consulting arm that helped other corporations implement similar reforms. He traveled frequently, speaking at conferences, training safety officers, sharing the lessons learned from Riverside. And everywhere he went, he carried Anna's photo and told her story, making sure she was remembered not just as a victim, but as someone whose death had sparked genuine change. Lily grew into a remarkable young woman. She started a nonprofit in middle school focused on environmental justice in manufacturing communities. By high school, she was testifying before congressional committees about corporate accountability. She carried her mother's idealism and her father's determination, blended with her own fierce intelligence and compassion. And Claire and Ethan built a life together, slowly and carefully, honoring the past while creating something new. They married on a quiet autumn afternoon 3 years after the shooting, with Lily as maid of honor and a photo of Anna prominently displayed. Because love didn't erase history, it built on it. They bought a house together, far from the factory districts, with a garden where Lily grew vegetables and flowers. They hosted dinners for Riverside families, maintaining connections and community. They worked side by side at Donovan Industries, partners in business and in life, proving every day that choosing justice over profit didn't mean choosing failure over success. On quiet evenings, when Lily was studying in her room and the house was peaceful, Claire and Ethan would sit on their porch and talk about how strange life was, how tragedy could become transformation, how one moment of violence could cascade into years of healing. "Do you ever regret it?" Claire asked one such evening, 5 years after the shooting that had changed everything. "Taking that bullet? Starting this whole cascade?" Ethan considered the question seriously. "I regret that Anna died. I regret that it took her death and 42 others to force change. I regret that Michael Torres felt violence was his only option. But do I regret saving you? Never. Because you took that terrible moment and turned it into something meaningful. You gave Anna's death purpose. That's all I ever wanted. I couldn't have done it without you, without your documentation, your courage, your willingness to work with the company that killed your wife. We did it together. That's the whole point, isn't it? One person can take a bullet, one person can tell the truth. But real change takes community. It takes people choosing to be better, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Claire leaned against his shoulder, comfortable in the silence that followed. Through the window, she could see Lily at her desk, bent over homework, growing into someone extraordinary. She asked me yesterday if I thought Anna would approve of her, Claire said quietly. Lily. She wanted to know if her mother would be proud of who she's becoming. What did you tell her? I told her that Anna was proud of her before she was born, and that pride only grows. That her mother's love isn't conditional on achievement or perfection. It just is, permanent and unshakable. Claire paused. Was that okay? I didn't want to overstep. It was perfect, because it's true. Ethan kissed the top of her head. You're a good mother to her, not replacing Anna, just adding another layer of love and support. Lily's lucky to have both her mothers, even if one is only here in memory. Inside the house, Lily looked up from her homework and saw them on the porch, silhouetted against the evening sky. She smiled, feeling the warmth of being loved and safe. She picked up the photo of her mother that sat on her desk, the one of Anna laughing, young and alive and full of hope. Look, Mom, she whispered to the photo. We're okay. We're more than okay. We're happy, and we're making the world better, just like you wanted. I hope you can see us. I hope you're proud. The photo didn't answer, of course, but Lily felt her mother's presence anyway, woven into every good thing in her life, every kind choice, every moment of courage. Years later, when Lily graduated from college with degrees in environmental engineering and public policy, she gave a speech that went viral. Standing at the podium in her cap and gown, she told the story of her mother's death, her father's heroism, and Claire's transformation of an entire company. My mother died because a corporation valued profit over her life, Lily said, her voice clear and strong. But her death, tragic as it was, sparked a revolution. It showed that accountability is possible, that corporations can choose differently, that one person's courage, my father's or Claire Donovan's or my mother's, can ripple outward and change the world. She held up her diploma. This degree represents years of study and hard work, but more than that, it represents the work my mother never got to finish. She didn't get to see me grow up, didn't get to pursue her dreams, didn't get to change the systems she believed needed changing. So I'm going to do it for her. I'm going to fight for worker safety and environmental justice and corporate accountability. I'm going to make sure her death meant something beyond tragedy. In the audience, Claire and Ethan held hands, both crying, both impossibly proud. This brilliant, fierce young woman was the best of Anna, the best of Ethan, and something uniquely herself. She was proof that tragedy didn't have to be the end of the story, that from ashes and grief, something beautiful could grow. A decade after the shooting, Donovan Industries was a completely different entity. The company had diversified into green manufacturing, become a leader in worker safety standards, and pioneered transparent reporting of all incidents and concerns. The stock price had recovered and then grown beyond its previous highs, proving that ethical business practices and profitability could coexist. Claire eventually stepped back from day-to-day operations, transitioning to board chair while a new CEO, handpicked for his commitment to the company's reformed values, took over. She spent her time now on advocacy work, speaking at business schools about ethical leadership, serving on nonprofit boards focused on corporate accountability. Ethan remained as director of worker safety until his retirement, then continued as a consultant, his expertise sought by companies around the world. The safety protocols he'd developed became industry standard, saving countless lives and preventing disasters that would have been inevitable under the old model. And the Riverside Memorial Park became a gathering place, not just for grieving families, but for communities discussing worker safety, corporate responsibility, and the power of truth-telling. Schools brought students there to learn about the cost of negligence and the importance of speaking up. On the 15th anniversary of Anna's death, the three of them, Claire and Ethan and Lily, returned to the memorial. Lily was 23 now, working for a national workers' rights organization, dating a kind young man who shared her passion for justice. She'd become exactly who Anna would have wanted her to be, carrying her mother's legacy forward into new battles and new victories. They stood before Anna's name on the memorial, placing fresh flowers as they did every year. "Hi, Mom," Lily said, as she always did. Still making you proud. Still changing things. Still carrying your love forward. Ethan put his arm around his daughter, then extended his other arm to pull Claire close. We did it, Anna. We took your death and turned it into purpose. Turned tragedy into transformation. I hope, wherever you are, you can see what we've built. Claire added her own quiet prayer. Thank you, Anna, for loving Ethan and Lily so well, for teaching them about second chances and forgiveness, for making them the people they are. I promise to honor your memory by continuing the work, by never letting the company forget what complacency costs, by loving your family as fiercely as you did. The sun was setting, painting the memorial park in shades of gold and amber. Other families were there too, maintaining the ritual of remembrance, keeping the 43 names alive in memory and deed. As they walked back to their car, Lily, between Claire and Ethan, holding both their hands, she said something that captured everything they'd built from the wreckage. You know what I think? I think Mom's death wasn't meaningless. It was terrible and wrong and never should have happened. But it wasn't meaningless. Because it changed you, Dad. And it changed you, Claire. And those changes spread outward, touching thousands of lives, preventing other deaths, other families from being destroyed. Mom's life mattered, and her death, as awful as it was, became the catalyst for something important. Your mother's life would have mattered regardless, Ethan said gently. She didn't need to die to be significant. I know. But since she did die, since we can't change that, at least we made it count for something. That's not nothing. No, Claire agreed. That's everything. They drove home through the city that had witnessed their transformation, past the Donovan Industries headquarters that now bore Anna's name on a building dedicated to worker safety, through streets that held the stories of countless people affected by one moment of violence that had cascaded into years of healing. That night, after Lily had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Claire and Ethan sat in their living room, surrounded by the life they'd built from impossible circumstances. Do you remember what you said to me in the hospital? Claire asked. When I asked why you saved me. I said you weren't your father, that you could be better. I've spent 15 years trying to live up to that belief, trying to be worthy of the chance you gave me. She took his hand. Do you think I've succeeded? Ethan pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Anna believed the measure of a person wasn't their worst moment, but what they built afterward. By that standard, you've succeeded beyond anything I could have imagined. We succeeded. You, me, Lily, everyone who chose to believe change was possible. Claire settled against him, feeling the peace that came from knowing she'd done the work, kept the promises, honored the dead by protecting the living. We turned a bullet into a revolution, turned tragedy into transformation. That's not nothing. No, Ethan agreed, holding her close as the city lights twinkled through their windows. That's everything. And in that moment, in that house built on honesty and healing, with the memory of Anna Cole honored in every choice they'd made and every life they'd saved, they understood what legacy really meant. Not buildings or profits or power, not even justice, though that mattered. Legacy was love that outlasted loss, courage that inspired others to be brave, truth that freed people to be better, change that rippled outward from a single moment of choice, affecting lives that would never know the names or faces of those who'd sacrificed so much to make the world a little bit safer, a little bit more just, a little bit more human. A janitor had blocked a bullet. A CEO had chosen truth over empire. A child had taught them all about forgiveness and hope. And from those 3 acts of courage, a new story had been written, one that proved that even in the darkest moments, when tragedy seemed absolute, people could choose light, could choose mercy, could choose to be better. And that choice, repeated every day for 15 years, had changed everything.